The human guard's muscles tense as he spots the shimmer in the air. In that instant, Daniel Coleman knows the alien princess's life hangs by a thread. The grand ballroom of Ventax Prime's royal palace teems with dignitaries from Earth and Ventax. Princess Cora, heir to the Ventaxian throne, stands at the podium. Her iridescent scales catch the light as she addresses the crowd, her multifaceted eyes scanning the room. She speaks of unity, of strengthening ties between their worlds. Daniel, a human security specialist contracted to train the Ventaxian Royal Guard, scans the shadows above. His instincts, honed by years of experience, scream danger. The faint distortion in the air above the balcony confirms his fears, a cloaking device. As Princess Cora continues her speech, Daniel's mind races. He calculates distances, angles, escape routes. His human reaction time, superior to that of the Ventaxians, may be the only thing standing between the princess and certain death. The assassin, a member of a radical anti-human faction, takes aim. His high-powered energy weapon, concealed by advanced Ventaxian stealth technology, locks onto its target. Daniel springs into action. He pushes through the crowd, his movements a blur to the stunned aliens around him. Ventaxian guards, caught off guard, turn to track his sudden sprint across the ballroom. Time slows. The assassin fires. A deadly beam of energy streaks towards Princess Cora. Daniel lunges, crossing the final meters in a desperate dive. His body slams into the princess, knocking her ornate headdress askew. They hit the ground hard as the energy blast sears overhead, leaving a smoking crater in the ornate floor where Cora stood moments before. Chaos erupts. Ventaxian guards scramble, their training kicking in belatedly. Daniel, still shielding the princess with his body, barks orders. His voice, filled with authority, cuts through the panic. Secure the perimeter. Block all exits. He shouts, directing the alien security forces with the precision of a battlefield commander. The guards respond, their movements becoming more coordinated under the human's guidance. Daniel helps Princess Cora to her feet, his eyes scanning her for injuries. The princess stares at him, shock giving way to gratitude. Her alien features, the shimmering scales, the large eyes with their myriad facets, reflect a newfound respect for her human savior. The assassin, his position compromised, attempts to flee. But Daniel's quick thinking has already cut off his escape routes. Ventaxian guards close in, their movements now purposeful and effective. As the immediate danger passes, the implications of the foiled assassination attempt begin to sink in. This incident marks a turning point in Ventaxian-human relations. It exposes a persistent thread of anti-human sentiment among certain Ventaxian factions, while simultaneously demonstrating the invaluable contributions humans can make to Ventaxian society. Daniel Coleman stands at the center of it all, a human who has just altered the course of an alien world. As he surveys the scene, the shaken princess, the approaching guards, the signs of battle etched into the grand ballroom, he knows his mission on Ventax Prime has only just begun. The complex world of Ventaxian politics and intrigue stretches before him, a challenge that will test the limits of interspecies cooperation and his own abilities. The day a human guard stepped in at the last second to save an alien princess marks the beginning of a new chapter in the relationship between Earth and Ventax Prime. And Daniel Coleman, security specialist turned diplomatic linchpin, finds himself at the heart of this unfolding cosmic drama. As the dust settled in the grand ballroom, Daniel Coleman's mind raced with the implications of what had just transpired. The foiled assassination attempt had thrown the delicate balance of Ventaxian politics into chaos, and he knew his role in this cosmic drama was nowhere near the end. Before Daniel could fully process the events, a royal messenger approached him. "Mr. Coleman, your presence is required in the High Council chamber immediately," the Ventaxian said, his scales shimmering with urgency. Daniel nodded. casting a final glance around the ballroom before following the messenger through the palace's winding corridors. The opulent halls, with their alien architecture and shimmering, bioluminescent decorations, seemed to pulse with tension. As they approached the high council chamber, Daniel could hear Ray's voices echoing from within. The messenger ushered him inside, and Daniel found himself in a vast, circular room. Tiered seating surrounded a central platform, and at the head of the chamber sat King Xyrax, his deep blue scales gleaming under the chamber's ethereal lighting. The king's silver eyes fixed on Daniel as he entered. "Mr. Coleman." King Xyrax's voice boomed, silencing the murmurs of the council members. "Step forward." Daniel approached the central platform, acutely aware of the scrutiny from the assembled Ventaxian counselors. Their iridescent scales reflected a kaleidoscope of colors, matching the intensity of their gazes. "Your actions today have saved my daughter's life," King Xyrax continued. "For this, you have our gratitude. However, the implications of this incident reach far beyond a single act of heroism." A counselor with emerald scales interjected, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Your Majesty, while we appreciate Mr. Coleman's intervention, we cannot ignore the security breach that allowed this assassin to infiltrate the palace in the first place." Another counselor, his scales of burnished copper, added, "And what of the growing human influence on our world? This incident only highlights the potential dangers of increased cooperation." Daniel stood silently, observing the debate unfold. His gaze drifted to a corner of the chamber where Princess Cora sat, her eyes fixed on him. The weight of her stare conveyed volumes, gratitude, concern, and a silent plea for support. As the council's arguments grew more heated, a piercing alarm suddenly cut through the chamber. The room's screens flickered to life, displaying security feeds from the capital city. Daniel's breath caught in his throat at the sight. Thousands of Ventaxians flooded the streets, their scales creating a dazzling, undulating sea of color. But this was no celebration. Burning effigies of human figures cast an ominous glow over the crowd as they surged towards the palace. King Xyrax rose, his commanding presence silencing the chamber. "Initiate palace lockdown," he ordered. "Deploy the royal guard to contain this riot." Daniel stepped forward, his mind racing. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "If I may suggest an alternative approach?" All eyes turned to him as Daniel outlined his plan, combining Ventaxian technology with human peacekeeping tactics. He explained how a nonviolent resolution could be achieved, potentially turning this crisis into an opportunity for improved relations. King Xyrax's silver eyes studied Daniel intently. After a moment of consideration, he nodded. "Very well, Mr. Coleman. You will lead a joint human Ventaxian team to handle this situation." As Daniel prepared to leave, Princess Cora rose from her seat. "Father," she said, her voice ringing clear in the chamber, "I wish to join this team." A ripple of protest swept through the council, but King Xyrax raised a hand for silence. "Your presence could indeed help calm our people," he said to Cora. "Go, but be cautious." Minutes later, Daniel found himself leading a mixed team of human peacekeepers and Ventaxian guards towards the riot's front lines. Princess Cora stood beside him, her scales shimmering with purpose. As they approached the seething mass of protesters, Daniel activated a Ventaxian force field, enveloping their team in a shimmering bubble of energy. He then produced a sleek, human-designed device. This emits a sonic frequency that affects Ventaxian physiology, Daniel explained to Cora. It should help reduce aggression in the crowd. He activated the device, and a barely perceptible hum filled the air. The effect on the rioters was almost immediate. The front lines of the crowd began to falter, their movements becoming less coordinated. Daniel directed his team to spread out, creating a living barrier between the rioters and the palace. The sight of Princess Cora standing alongside humans seemed to give many in the crowd pause. As the combined effect of the sonic device and the princess's presence began to take hold, Daniel knew they were at a crucial juncture. The next few moments would determine not just the outcome of this riot, but potentially the future of human-Ventaxian relations. He took a deep breath, his mind racing with possible scenarios and strategies. The weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders as he prepared to address the crowd, knowing his words could tip the balance between peace and chaos. Daniel took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the seething mass of protesters before him. The sonic device hummed softly in his hand, its effects already visible in the crowd's faltering movements. Princess Cora stood tall beside him, her iridescent scales gleaming in the city's artificial light. As he prepared to address the crowd, Daniel's tactical mind kicked into overdrive. He noticed subtle patterns in the mob's movements, identifying key figures who seemed to be coordinating the chaos. A plan began to form in his mind. "Princess," he said, turning to Cora, "I need you to address the crowd. Use your influence to keep their attention focused on you." Cora nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting perseverance. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and strong over the tumult. "People of Ventax Prime, hear me. I stand before you not just as your princess, but as a fellow citizen concerned for our future." As Cora spoke, Daniel signaled to a small team of human and Ventaxian operatives. They moved swiftly and silently through the crowd, their movements masked by a combination of Ventaxian cloaking technology and human stealth techniques. Daniel led the team, his enhanced human reflexes allowing him to weave through the mass of bodies with uncanny precision. He approached the first instigator, a Ventaxian with crimson scales who was shouting orders to those around him. In one fluid motion, Daniel activated a modified Ventaxian stun weapon. The human-designed targeting system hummed to life, locking onto the instigator with pinpoint accuracy. A burst of energy pulsed from the weapon, and the Ventaxian dropped silently to the ground. Similar scenes played out across the crowd, as Daniel's team systematically neutralized the key agitators. With each takedown, the riot's cohesion weakened further. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught Daniel's eye. He spun to see a group of heavily armed Ventaxians emerging from an alleyway, their weapons trained on the palace's outer defenses. Energy beams lanced out, slamming into the shimmering force field protecting the royal residence. "Extremists!" Daniel shouted into his comm unit. "All units, regroup and engage." He quickly reorganized his team, integrating human combat tactics with Ventaxian technology. "Alpha Squad, flank left. Beta Squad, provide covering fire. Use both human and Ventaxian weapons. Keep them guessing." The joint force sprang into action. Human operatives demonstrated remarkable adaptability, quickly mastering unfamiliar Ventaxian weapons. Their Ventaxian counterparts, inspired by human tactics, moved with newfound agility and unpredictability. As the battle raged, Daniel noticed a weakness in the extremist formation, a gap in their defenses, barely visible to the untrained eye, but glaringly obvious to his tactically trained mind. "Princess Cora," he called out, "I need your help. We're going to hit them where they're weakest." Cora's eyes widened, but she nodded resolutely. "I'm with you, Daniel." Together, they led a small strike team towards a vulnerable point in the extremist lines. Daniel moved with fluid grace, his human physique allowing him to dodge energy blasts that would have felled a Ventaxian. As they closed in on the extremist leader, Daniel engaged him in hand-to-hand combat. The Ventaxian was larger and stronger, but Daniel's human reflexes and martial arts training gave him the edge. In a flurry of strikes and counterstrikes, Daniel disarmed the leader, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. The extremist leader's defeat sent shockwaves through his followers. Their dedication crumbled, and within minutes, the last pockets of resistance surrendered. As the dust settled, Daniel surveyed the scene. The riot had dissipated. The extremists were in custody, and casualties on both sides had been minimal. His innovative approach, combining human ingenuity with Ventaxian technology, had proven remarkably effective. King Zyrax's voice crackled over the comm system. "Mr. Coleman, report to the High Council chamber immediately." Daniel exchanged a glance with Princess Cora, whose eyes shimmered with a mix of admiration and something deeper, more personal. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. As they made their way back to the palace, Daniel's mind raced. He had averted a crisis, but he knew this was just the beginning. The extremist threat remained, and the tensions within Ventaxian society ran deep. His actions in the coming hours and days would be crucial in shaping the future of human Ventaxian relations. The High Council chamber loomed before him, its doors sliding open with a soft hiss. Daniel stepped inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The chamber fell silent as Daniel entered, all eyes fixed on him. King Zyrax rose from his ornate throne, his silver eyes gleaming with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Coleman," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber, "your actions today have demonstrated a level of tactical acumen and adaptability that we rarely see, even among our own kind." Daniel stood tall, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. The king continued, "In light of your exceptional service to our world, I am appointing you as the official human liaison to the Ventaxian royal court." A ripple of murmurs swept through the assembled counselors. Daniel's mind raced, processing the implications of this unprecedented appointment. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "I'm honored by your trust. I will do my utmost to serve both our peoples in this capacity." In the days that followed, Daniel immersed himself in his new role. He spent hours in meetings with Ventaxian officials, learning the intricacies of their political system and cultural nuances. His enhanced access to Ventaxian decision-making processes provided invaluable insights into the complex web of alliances and rivalries that shaped their society. During a late-night strategy session in his new office, a space that seamlessly blended human and Ventaxian design elements, Daniel noticed a pattern in the reports crossing his desk. Scattered complaints about human influence on Ventaxian society were coalescing into a more organized movement. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Princess Cora entered, her scales shimmering with subdued hues that reflected the room's soft lighting. "Daniel," she said, her multifaceted eyes meeting his, "I've been thinking about ways to address the growing concerns about human Ventaxian relations." She outlined her proposal for a cultural exchange program, her voice animated with enthusiasm. "By inviting human artists, scientists, and educators to Ventax Prime, we can showcase the benefits of our cooperation and foster greater understanding between our species." Daniel nodded, impressed by the princess's initiative. "It's an excellent idea, Your Highness. I'd be happy to help implement it." Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Cora worked closely to bring the cultural exchange program to life. They curated a diverse group of human participants, ensuring a broad representation of Earth's cultures and disciplines. As the first wave of human visitors arrived on Ventax Prime, the atmosphere in the capital city buzzed with excitement and curiosity. Daniel watched with satisfaction as Ventaxians and humans engaged in animated discussions, sharing ideas and experiences. However, his sense of accomplishment was short-lived. In the midst of a public demonstration of human and Ventaxian collaborative art, the city's power grid suddenly failed, plunging the event into darkness. Daniel's comm unit crackled to life with reports of similar outages across the planet. Initially dismissing them as isolated incidents, he soon realized the pattern was too widespread to be coincidental. King Zyrax summoned Daniel to an emergency council meeting. The chamber was tense, filled with worried whispers and accusatory glances. "Mr. Coleman," the king said, his voice grave, "these technical failures are becoming too frequent to ignore. I want you to lead an investigation into these incidents. Your unique perspective as a human might uncover details we've overlooked." Daniel nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "I'll assemble a joint human-Ventaxian task force immediately, Your Majesty." Over the next few days, Daniel and his team worked tirelessly, analyzing data from the affected systems. They integrated human analytical methods with Ventaxian technology, creating a hybrid approach that yielded surprising results. Late one night, as Daniel pored over a holographic display of network traffic patterns, he noticed an anomaly. A series of data packets, almost imperceptible amidst the sea of information, caught his attention. "This is it," he murmured, his fingers flying over the control panel. "These are the signatures of a sophisticated cyber attack." As he delved deeper into the data, Daniel uncovered evidence that the attackers possessed intimate knowledge of Ventaxian systems. The implications were disturbing. This wasn't just an external threat, but potentially an insider job. His investigation led him to a classified file mentioning a remote Ventaxian research facility. The file was heavily redacted, but what little information remained hinted at experiments far beyond the facility's official mandate of peaceful scientific research. Daniel's comm unit chimed with an incoming message from Princess Cora. "Meet me in the Royal Archives," her voice whispered urgently. "I found something you need to see." In the dim light of the archives, Cora revealed a set of classified documents she had obtained using her royal access. The information within sent a chill down Daniel's spine. "The facility," Cora said, her voice barely above a whisper, "they're reverse engineering human technology for military applications. They're preparing for a potential conflict with Earth." Daniel's mind raced with the implications. This revelation could shatter the fragile peace between their worlds if it became public knowledge. "We need to investigate this facility ourselves," he said, meeting Cora's gaze. Covertly, as they began planning their secret mission, Daniel felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The fate of human-Ventaxian relations hung in the balance, and one wrong move could plunge both species into chaos. With a mix of anticipation and apprehension, Daniel and Cora finalized their plan. They would infiltrate the facility under the cover of darkness, using a combination of Daniel's human stealth techniques and Cora's access to Ventaxian security systems. As they prepared to depart, Daniel checked his equipment one last time. The custom-designed stealth suit, a marvel of human and Ventaxian engineering, fit him like a second skin. He looked at Cora, her scales now a muted shade that blended seamlessly with the shadows. "Ready?" he asked. Cora nodded, her eyes glinting with perseverance. "Let's uncover the truth." Together, they slipped out of the palace and into the night, embarking on a mission that would test not only their skills but also their loyalty to their respective worlds. The answers they sought lay hidden in the depths of the mysterious research facility, and Daniel knew that what they discovered there could change everything. Everything they found there could change the course of human-Ventaxian relations forever. As they approached the research facility, Daniel activated his stealth suit. The advanced technology melded seamlessly with his body, bending light around him and rendering him nearly invisible. Beside him, Cora's scales shifted to a deep, muted shade that blended perfectly with the shadows. "Remember," Daniel whispered, "we stick to the plan. In and out, quick and quiet." Cora nodded, her eyes gleaming with perseverance in the darkness. They moved swiftly towards the facility's outer perimeter, where a network of sensors and force fields formed an intricate web of security. Daniel scanned the defenses, his eyes picking out vulnerabilities that the Ventaxians had overlooked. He pointed to a narrow gap between two sensor arrays. "There, that's our way in." With practiced ease, Daniel slipped through the opening, his human flexibility allowing him to contort his body in ways a Ventaxian never could. Cora followed, her movements graceful but not quite as fluid as Daniel's. Once inside the perimeter, they encountered the facility's main entrance. A complex locking mechanism secured the heavy doors. Daniel reached for his toolkit, but Cora stopped him with a gentle touch. "Allow me," she said softly, producing a small device from her belt. She pressed it against the lock, and within seconds, the doors slid open silently. They entered a vast underground complex, its sterile corridors stretching out before them like a labyrinth. The walls hummed with the energy of advanced technology, and the air carried a faint metallic tang. As they moved deeper into the facility, they passed a series of laboratories. Through reinforced windows, Daniel caught glimpses of Ventaxian scientists working on familiar-looking devices. His eyes widened as he recognized components of human weaponry and defensive systems. "They're reverse engineering our tech," he muttered, a mix of awe and concern in his voice. Cora's scales rippled with unease. The scale of this operation, it's far beyond anything we imagined. They continued through the maze-like structure, avoiding patrols and security cameras with a combination of Daniel's infiltration expertise and Cora's knowledge of Ventaxian protocols. Suddenly, Daniel froze, holding up a hand to signal Cora. Ahead, a heavily reinforced door bore an ominous label. Project Nexus, authorized personnel only. Cora stepped forward, her royal access code device in hand. "This is it," she whispered, activating the device. The door hissed open, revealing a massive chamber beyond. As they entered, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. In the center of the room stood a colossal machine, its design a fusion of human and Ventaxian technologies. "What is this thing?" Daniel breathed, circling the device cautiously. Cora's eyes widened as she accessed a nearby terminal. It's a weapon, an energy cannon capable of destroying entire planets. Daniel's mind raced as he examined the prototype. His expertise in human technology allowed him to spot critical flaws in the design. "This thing's unstable," he said urgently. "If they try to fire it, it could take out half the planet." Cora's scales paled. "We need to document everything. My father and the High Council must see this." As they worked to gather evidence, a voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. "I'm afraid I can't allow that." "Daniel," and Cora spun to face the speaker. A tall Ventaxian stood in the doorway, his eyes gleaming with fanatical intensity. "Dr. Zex, I presume?" Daniel said, his body tensing for action. The scientist's mouth curved into a cruel smile. "Mr. Coleman, your reputation precedes you. I must say, I'm impressed you made it this far." "Why are you doing this?" Cora demanded. "This weapon could destroy us all." Dr. Zex's eyes narrowed. "To ensure our supremacy, Princess. The galaxy is full of threats, and Earth is chief among them. With this weapon, we'll never need to fear again." He lunged for a control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. The massive weapon began to hum ominously, energy crackling along its surface. Daniel sprang into action, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He grappled with Dr. Zex, using his human strength and agility to counter the Ventaxian's superior size. "Cora!" he shouted between blows. "Shut it down!" The princess raced to the controls, her fingers dancing across the unfamiliar interface as she sought to halt the weapon's activation sequence. Daniel and Dr. Zex fought furiously, trading blows that echoed through the chamber. The human's combat training gave him an edge, but the Ventaxian's raw strength made him a formidable opponent. A sudden surge of energy from the prototype weapon sent arcs of electricity dancing across the room. Daniel saw his opening. With a quick feint, he maneuvered Dr. Zex into the path of an energy tendril. The Ventaxian screamed as the electricity coursed through him, momentarily incapacitating him. Daniel raced to the weapon, identifying key components with practiced ease. He tore into the machine, ripping out crucial parts and severing connections. "Daniel," Cora called out, "I can't stop the activation sequence." "Then we'll do it the hard way," Daniel growled, smashing delicate circuitry with his bare hands. The weapon's hum rose to a deafening pitch, then suddenly cut out as Daniel destroyed the final power coupling. The silence that followed was deafening. In the moment of quiet, they heard a low chuckle. Dr. Zex had recovered, his hand hovering over a small device on his belt. "You may have stopped the weapon," he snarled, "but you won't leave here alive." He pressed the device, and instantly, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. The floor beneath them shuddered ominously. Self-destruct sequence initiated. An automated voice announced, "All personnel evacuate immediately." Dr. Zex used the distraction to flee, disappearing through a hidden exit before Daniel could stop him. "We need to move," Daniel shouted over the din of alarms and rumbling machinery. They raced through the collapsing facility, dodging falling debris and navigating corridors that were rapidly becoming death traps. Daniel's quick reflexes saved Cora more than once, pulling her clear of falling beams and crumbling walls. As they neared the surface, a massive tremor shook the entire complex. The ceiling above them began to give way, tons of rock and metal plummeting towards them. Daniel reacted instinctively, shoving Cora forward with all his might. She tumbled through the exit just as the avalanche of debris came crashing down. For a heart-stopping moment, Cora thought Daniel had been buried alive. Then, with a grunt of effort, he pulled himself from the rubble, battered but alive. They stumbled away from the facility just as it imploded, leaving a massive crater in the once pristine landscape. Panting and covered in dust, they surveyed the destruction. "We did it," Cora said, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. Daniel nodded grimly. "But at what cost? Dr. Zex escaped, and we've just destroyed a secret government facility." They shared a look of understanding. Their ordeal was nowhere near the end. They had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened both their worlds, but proving it and dealing with the fallout would be a challenge all its own. "We need to get back to the capital," Daniel said, his mind already racing with plans and contingencies. "Your father and the High Council need to know everything we've learned." As they set off towards the distant lights of the Ventaxian capital, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. The fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, and the next moves they made would be crucial in shaping the future of human-Ventaxian relations. The weight of their discovery pressed heavily upon them as they made their way back to the Ventaxian capital. As they approached the towering spires of the city, Daniel's comm unit chimed with an urgent message. "Ambassador Coleman, your presence is required immediately at the High Council chambers," a stern voice announced. "Princess Cora as well." Daniel exchanged a glance with Cora, her scales shifting to a deep blue that reflected the gravity of the situation. They quickened their pace, weaving through the bustling streets until they reached the imposing edifice of the High Council building. Guards ushered them inside, their faces etched with concern. The air thrummed with tension as they were led to the main chamber. The doors swung open, revealing a scene of barely suppressed chaos. King Zyrak sat at the head of a long table, his normally regal bearing marred by visible distress. Council members argued in hushed but heated tones, their voices falling silent as Daniel and Cora entered. "Father," Cora began, her voice steady despite the circumstances, "we have uncovered something of dire importance." Daniel stepped forward, activating a holographic projector. Images of Project Nexus and the destroyed facility flickered to life, filling the chamber with ghostly blue light. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembled council members. "What you're seeing is evidence of a secret weapons program," Daniel explained, his voice cutting through the din. "A program designed to reverse engineer human technology for military purposes." He went on to detail their infiltration of the facility, the discovery of the planet-destroying weapon, and their narrow escape. As he spoke, the faces of the council members grew increasingly pale. Or in the case of the Ventaxians, their scales shifted to sickly hues. King Zyrax leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the holographic images. This is unthinkable. How could such a program exist without our knowledge? Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. A guard burst into the chamber, his scales a frantic pattern of red and orange. "Your Majesty, we're under attack." Screens around the room flickered to life, showing scenes of destruction across the capital. Explosions rocked key infrastructure points, plunging entire districts into darkness. "It's Dr. Zex," Daniel said, his mind racing. He must have activated sleeper cells within the city. King Zyrax rose, his voice booming with authority. "Initiate emergency protocols. I want every available security force mobilized immediately." As the council chamber erupted into action, Daniel's comm unit chimed again. The face of Earth's ambassador appeared, her expression grim. "Coleman, we've got a situation. Our deep space monitoring stations have picked up unusual energy signatures in Ventaxian space. They match the patterns we've seen during weapons testing." Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned to Cora, who had overheard the transmission. "Dr. Zex must have set up a new base of operations. We need to act fast." King Zyrax, overhearing their exchange, made a swift decision. "Ambassador Coleman, Princess Cora, I'm authorizing the formation of a joint human Ventaxian task force. Your mission is to locate Dr. Zex and put an end to this threat." Despite objections from some council members concerned for Cora's safety, she volunteered to lead the Ventaxian contingent. Daniel quickly assembled a team of elite human operatives, while Cora gathered loyal Ventaxian soldiers and scientists. As they prepared to depart, Daniel and Cora made a chilling discovery. Hidden within the data they had recovered from the destroyed facility was a reference to an ancient Ventaxian artifact known as the Nexus Key. "The legends say it can amplify energy on an unimaginable scale," Cora explained, her voice hushed with awe and fear. "If Dr. Zex has this, he could turn that prototype into a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems," Daniel finished, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. With renewed urgency, they boarded their ships, a sleek combination of human and Ventaxian technology. As they launched into space, leaving behind a planet in turmoil, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. Their long-range sensors pinged as they approached the outer reaches of Ventaxian space. A massive energy buildup registered in a nearby asteroid field. "That's got to be it," Daniel said, studying the readouts. "He's using the asteroids for cover." Cora nodded, her scales shimmering with purpose. "How do we approach without triggering the weapon?" Daniel's mind worked furiously, analyzing the problem from every angle. "We'll use a combination of our stealth tech and your energy masking fields. It's risky, but it's our best shot at getting close enough to infiltrate." As they finalized their plan and prepared to execute it, the asteroid field suddenly came alive. Weapons platforms materialized from hidden recesses, and swarms of combat drones poured forth, creating a deadly gauntlet before them. "Evasive maneuvers," Daniel shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The task force ships danced through space, narrowly avoiding the onslaught of energy beams and missiles. Through the chaos of battle, Daniel steered their ship towards the heart of the asteroid field, where the energy readings were strongest. Cora worked beside him, her Ventaxian reflexes complementing his human intuition as they navigated the deadly obstacle course. As they pushed deeper into the asteroid field, the true scale of Dr. Zex's operation became clear. A massive structure loomed before them, built into the largest asteroid. Energy crackled around it, hinting at the power contained within. "This is it," Daniel said, his voice tight with focus. "We're going in." They prepared for the final approach, knowing that the fate of both Earth and Ventax Prime hung in the balance. The Nexus Key, the prototype weapon, and Dr. Zex himself all lay ahead, along with the potential to reshape the entire galaxy. As they approached the massive structure built into the largest asteroid, Daniel's grip tightened on the controls. "All teams, prepare for infiltration," he commanded through the comm channel. "Engage stealth protocols on my mark." Cora's fingers danced across the control panel, activating the Ventaxian energy masking fields. The ship's exterior shimmered, its energy signature fading to match the surrounding asteroids. "Stealth systems online," she reported, her scales shifting to a deep purple of concentration. "Mark," Daniel said, and their small strike team broke away from the main fleet. As they approached the asteroid base, the full might of Dr. Zex's defenses became apparent. Energy weapons lashed out from hidden emplacements, while swarms of automated drones filled the space between the rocks. Daniel's piloting skills were put to the test as he wove through the deadly gauntlet. The ship bucked and shuddered, narrowly avoiding beams of searing energy and waves of projectiles. "Hold on!" he shouted as he executed a series of tight maneuvers, using the asteroids themselves as cover. Cora gripped her seat, her eyes wide as she watched Daniel navigate the treacherous field. "Your piloting skills are most impressive," she said, a note of admiration in her voice. They reached the central asteroid, its surface pockmarked with weapon emplacements and hangar bays. Daniel guided their ship towards a small, inconspicuous maintenance airlock. "Princess, can you get us in?" he asked, hovering near the entry point. Cora nodded, her fingers flying over the access panel. "My royal code should still work, unless Dr. Zex has completely overhauled the system." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the airlock cycled open. "Excellent work," Daniel said, maneuvering their ship inside. Once docked, the strike team moved swiftly through the base's winding corridors. The interior was a jarring mix of Ventaxian architecture and reverse-engineered human technology. Exposed power conduits pulsed with energy, casting an eerie glow over the metallic walls. "This way," Cora whispered, leading them deeper into the facility. Her scales had shifted to match the dull gray of the walls, an unconscious camouflage response. They encountered surprisingly little resistance as they made their way towards the central chamber. The distant sound of alarms and weapons fire suggested that the main fleet's assault was drawing most of the base's security forces. As they approached a large set of doors, voices drifted out from within. Daniel held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. He crept forward, pressing his ear to the door. Dr. Zex's voice, filled with manic glee, carried clearly through the metal. "Prepare the final activation sequence. With the Nexus key, we'll reshape the galaxy to our will." Daniel turned to Cora, his expression grim. "We're out of time. He's about to activate the weapon." Cora's eyes widened in realization. "Wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Nexus key requires royal DNA to activate. My father must have built in a failsafe." Daniel's mind raced, formulating a plan. "Can you override his commands?" Cora nodded slowly. "I believe so, but I'll need direct access to the control terminal." "All right," Daniel said, his voice low and intense. "Here's what we're going to do. I'll lead a frontal assault to draw their attention. Cora, you slip in during the chaos and take control of the Nexus key." The princess's scales rippled with a mix of fear and willpower. "Understood." Daniel turned to the rest of the strike team. "On my signal, we breach. Hit them hard and fast. Our objective is to keep Dr. Zex and his guards occupied." The team took up positions around the door, weapons at the ready. Daniel met each of their eyes in turn, seeing the same perseverance he felt mirrored back at him. "Now!" he shouted, and the door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The strike team surged forward, filling the air with weapons fire. Dr. Zex's guards, caught off guard by the sudden assault, scrambled for cover. In the midst of the chaos, Daniel caught a glimpse of Cora slipping away, using her natural Ventaxian camouflage to blend into the shadows at the edge of the room. He focused his attention on the far end of the chamber, where Dr. Zek stood before a massive control panel. The Ventaxian scientist's eyes blazed with fury as he saw Daniel. "You!" he snarled, reaching for a weapon at his belt. "You will not interfere with my great work." Daniel dodged the first shot, feeling the heat of the energy blast as it seared past his ear. He closed the distance quickly, relying on his hand-to-hand combat training to neutralize Dr. Zex's guards. As he fought his way closer to the mad scientist, Daniel became aware of a new sound rising above the din of battle, a deep, ominous hum that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space itself. Dr. Zex's laugh cut through the noise. "You're too late, human. The Nexus key is powering up. Soon, I'll have the power to reshape reality itself." Daniel's eyes darted to the side, searching for Cora. He caught a flash of movement near the main control terminal and silently urged her to hurry. Turning back to Dr. Zex, he saw the scientist's hand hovering over a small device on his wrist. The look in the Ventaxian's eyes sent a chill down Daniel's spine. "Even if you stop me," Dr. Zex said, his voice low and dangerous, "I'll make sure you don't leave this asteroid alive. One press of this button, and the entire base will be turned into a singularity, tearing a hole in space-time itself." Daniel tensed, ready to spring into action. The fate of multiple worlds now balanced on a knife's edge. With Cora racing against time to gain control of the Nexus key and Daniel locked in a deadly standoff with the madman who threatened to destroy everything. The hum of the Nexus key grew louder, energy crackling visibly around the room. Daniel knew that the next few moments would determine not just the outcome of their mission, but the future of human-Ventaxian relations and the safety of countless lives across the galaxy. As the tension reached a fever pitch, Daniel's muscles coiled, ready to spring into action. In that moment, Dr. Zex's hand darted towards a device on his wrist. Daniel lunged forward, his combat training kicking in as he grappled with the Ventaxian scientist. The two opponents crashed into the control panel, sending sparks flying as they struggled for dominance. "You cannot stop progress, human," Dr. Zex snarled, his scales flushing a deep crimson in his rage. Daniel gritted his teeth, using his superior strength to force Dr. Zex's arm away from the detonator. "Progress built on destruction isn't progress at all," he growled back. As they fought, the base shuddered violently. The distant boom of explosions echoed through the facility, a reminder of the fierce battle raging outside. Daniel knew their time was running short. Across the room, Cora worked feverishly at the main terminal, her fingers flying over the alien interface. Her scales rippled with concentration as she input a complex series of commands, drawing on her royal lineage and diplomatic training to decipher the Nexus Key's activation protocol. "Almost there," she muttered, her eyes fixed on the scrolling data before her. Daniel, still locked in combat with Dr. Zex, managed to land a solid blow to the scientist's midsection. The Ventaxian's breath left him in a whoosh, and his grip on the wrist device loosened. Seizing the opportunity, Daniel wrenched it free and flung it across the room. The detonator skittered across the floor, coming to rest at the edge of an open maintenance shaft. Both combatants froze for a split second, their eyes locked on the device that could spell doom for them all. Then, as one, they dove for it. Daniel's human reflexes gave him the edge. His fingers closed around the detonator mere moments before Dr. Zex could reach it. The Ventaxian scientist let out a howl of frustration, his clawed hand swiping at Daniel's face. Dodging the attack, Daniel rolled to his feet, clutching the detonator tightly. "It's over, Zex," he said, his voice firm. "Surrender now, before anyone else gets hurt." But Dr. Zex was beyond reason. His eyes, wild with desperation, darted around the room. Suddenly, He lunged towards a secondary control panel. "If I can't have the Nexus key, no one will," he shouted, his fingers dancing over the controls. Alarms blared throughout the facility as blast doors began to slam shut, cutting off sections of the base. Daniel's comm unit crackled to life, filled with the panicked voices of the strike team as they found their escape routes blocked. "Cora," Daniel called out, splitting his attention between the princess and the mad scientist. "We need to shut this place down now." "Working on it," Cora replied, her voice strained as she raced to complete the override sequence. "The Nexus key is responding to my commands, but I need more time to safely power it down." Daniel made a split-second decision. "Strike team, begin evacuation procedures immediately," he ordered into his comm. "Secure a path to our shuttle. Cora and I will handle things here and catch up with you." As his team acknowledged the order, Daniel turned his full attention back to Dr. Zex. The scientist had activated the base's internal defenses, and security drones were beginning to swarm into the room. "Cora, watch out!" Daniel shouted, diving to tackle the princess as an energy blast seared through the air where she had been standing moments before. They hit the ground hard, rolling behind a bank of equipment for cover. Daniel could feel the heat of Cora's scales against him, her body tense and alert. "Thanks," she said, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment before turning back to the chaos around them. "We need to get back to that terminal. I'm so close to shutting down the Nexus key." Daniel nodded, his mind racing as he assessed their options. The room was quickly filling with automated defenses, and Dr. Zex was making his way towards another set of controls. "I'll draw their fire," Daniel said, checking his weapon. "You make a run for the terminal when I give the signal." Cora's scales shifted to a steely gray, a sign of her purpose. "Be careful, Daniel," she said softly. With a nod, Daniel burst from cover, laying down a barrage of suppressing fire. The security drones turned their attention to him, energy blasts scorching the air as he dodged and weaved through the room. "Now!" he shouted, and Cora sprinted towards the main terminal, her form blurring as she utilized her natural Ventaxian camouflage. As Cora resumed her work on the Nexus key, Daniel fought his way towards Dr. Zex. The scientist was hunched over a control panel, his fingers flying across the interface. "No!" Daniel yelled as he realized what Zex was doing. The power core's energy readings were spiking dangerously, threatening to overload and take the entire asteroid field with it. Daniel reached Dr. Zex just as the scientist finished inputting the overload sequence. They grappled once more, the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance as they fought for control of the panel. "You're too late, human," Dr. Zex spat, his eyes gleaming with madness. "Even if you stop me now, this base will tear itself apart, and you along with it." The facility shuddered violently, the power core's energy levels climbing to dangerous heights. Warning klaxons blared, adding to the cacophony of battle. "Cora," Daniel called out, struggling to keep Dr. Zex pinned. "We're running out of time." "I've shut down the Nexus key," Cora replied, her voice tight with tension. "But the power core is beyond my control. It's going to overload." Daniel's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the complex web of energy conduits and control systems. Suddenly, a desperate plan began to form. "Cora, can you initiate a system-wide shutdown?" he asked, dodging a wild swing from Dr. Zex. "I can try," she replied, her fingers already moving across the terminal. "But it won't be fast enough to stop the overload." Daniel gritted his teeth, knowing what he had to do. "Just do it," he said. "I've got an idea, but it's going to be close." As Cora worked to shut down the base's systems, Daniel redoubled his efforts against Dr. Zex. With a final, powerful blow, he knocked the scientist unconscious, then sprinted towards the power core's main control interface. Time seemed to slow as Daniel assessed the complex array before him. Drawing on his knowledge of human engineering and what he'd learned about Ventaxian technology, he began to formulate a plan. If he could identify a weakness in the containment system, he might be able to trigger a controlled release of energy, preventing a catastrophic explosion. The base groaned around them, panels buckling as the power overload strained the very fabric of the structure. Daniel's hands flew over the controls, making minute adjustments and bypassing safety protocols. "Daniel, whatever you're doing, do it fast," Cora called out, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and creaking metal. Sweat beaded on Daniel's forehead as he worked, the heat from the overloading core becoming almost unbearable. He could feel the energy building, threatening to tear the asteroid apart at any moment. With a final, decisive movement, Daniel input the last command sequence. The power core pulsed, energy arcing wildly across its surface. For a heart-stopping moment, Daniel feared he had miscalculated. Then, with a deafening roar, the core began to vent its excess energy in a controlled burst. The release sent shockwaves through the facility, knocking both Daniel and Cora off their feet. As the dust settled and the alarms finally fell silent, Daniel pushed himself up, his ears ringing. He looked around, assessing the damage. The base was a wreck, sparking conduits and twisted metal everywhere, but it was still intact. "Cora?" he called out, searching for the princess. "Here," came her reply as she emerged from behind a fallen console. Her scales were dulled with dust, but her eyes were bright with relief. "You did it, Daniel. You actually did it." Daniel allowed himself a small smile, the adrenaline of the moment still coursing through his veins. "We did it," he corrected her. "But we're not out of this yet. We need to secure Dr. Zex and get off this rock before—" His words were cut off by a violent tremor that shook the entire facility. The controlled energy release had prevented an explosion, but the asteroid base was still falling apart. "Time to go," Daniel said, moving quickly to restrain the unconscious Dr. Zex. "Let's hope our team has that escape route secured." As they made their way through the crumbling facility, Daniel knew that their mission was a long way to go. They had stopped Dr. Zex and contained the threat of the Nexus Key, but the repercussions of this incident would be felt across both human and Ventaxian space for years to come. A stark reminder of how close they had come to total disaster. Destruction. Daniel and Cora sprinted through the disintegrating corridors, the unconscious form of Dr. Zex slung over Daniel's shoulder. Another violent tremor shook the facility, causing chunks of ceiling to rain down around them. Daniel narrowly avoided a falling beam, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to sidestep the debris while maintaining his grip on the Ventaxian scientist. "The structural integrity is failing faster than I anticipated," Cora shouted over the cacophony of alarms and groaning metal. Her scales had taken on a mottled pattern of grays and reds, reflecting the urgency of their situation. Daniel nodded grimly, his eyes scanning for the fastest route to their extraction point. "We need to move faster. The energy release might have prevented an explosion, but this whole place is coming apart at the seams." As they rounded a corner, they encountered a new obstacle. The corridor ahead had completely collapsed, blocking their path to the hangar where their shuttle waited. "Damn it," Daniel muttered, quickly assessing their options. "We'll have to find another way around." Cora's eyes widened as she glanced at a nearby status panel. "Daniel, we don't have time. The base's life support systems are failing. We have minutes at most before this entire section depressurizes." The human soldier's mind raced, considering and discarding options in rapid succession. Suddenly, his eyes locked onto a maintenance access panel near the floor. "There," he said, pointing. "That should lead us to the auxiliary systems corridor. It'll be a tight squeeze, but it might be our only shot at reaching the hangar in time." Without hesitation, Cora moved to the panel, her slender fingers working quickly to bypass the security locks. As the panel slid open, Daniel carefully maneuvered the unconscious Dr. Zex into the narrow passageway. "You go first," he told Cora. "I'll bring up the rear and make sure our friend here doesn't get left behind." The princess nodded, her live form easily slipping into the maintenance shaft. Daniel followed, pushing Dr. Zex ahead of him as he crawled through the cramped space. The journey through the maintenance shaft was arduous. The base's continued deterioration caused the metal to twist and groan around them. More than once, Daniel had to use his strength to force open a section that had begun to buckle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity in the claustrophobic passage, they emerged into the auxiliary system's corridor. The room was a maze of pipes and conduits, many of which were now sparking dangerously or venting superheated steam. "The hangar should be just beyond that bulkhead," Cora said, pointing to a heavy blast door at the far end of the room. As they made their way through the hazardous space, Daniel's calm crackled to life. The voice of his team's pilot came through, distorted by static. "Commander Coleman, do you copy? We can't hold this position much longer. The asteroid's breaking up, and we're taking fire from automated defenses." "Copy that," Daniel responded, his voice strained as he ducked under a burst of steam. "We're almost there. Stand by for immediate extraction." They reached the blast door, but Daniel's heart sank as he saw the damage to the control panel. The circuitry was fried, rendering the door inoperable. "Can you bypass it?" he asked Cora, who was already examining the panel. She shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "Not without tools we don't have. The system's completely dead." Daniel set Dr. Zex down and moved to the door, running his hands along its seam. "Then we do this the old-fashioned way. Help me get a grip on this edge. Between your Ventaxian strength and my augmentations, we might be able to force it open." They positioned themselves on either side of the door, fingers searching for purchase in the narrow gap. With a shared nod, they began to pull. The muscles in Daniel's arms strained as he exerted every ounce of his enhanced strength. Beside him, Cora's scales rippled with effort, taking on a deep crimson hue. For a moment, nothing happened, and Daniel feared they had reached the limit of their combined strength. Then, with a screech of protesting metal, the door began to move. Slowly at first, then with gathering momentum, they forced the blast door open wide enough to pass through. As the gap widened, the difference in air pressure caused a violent rush of wind. Daniel barely managed to grab Dr. Zex before the unconscious scientist was sucked towards the opening. "Go!" Daniel shouted to Cora over the howling wind. "Get to the shuttle and start the pre-flight sequence. I'll be right behind you with our cargo." Cora hesitated for a split second, her eyes meeting Daniel's. Then she nodded and darted through the opening, her form blurring as she engaged her natural camouflage. Daniel hefted Dr. Zex onto his shoulder once more and followed, fighting against the air current as he squeezed through the gap. He emerged into the hangar bay, immediately assessing the situation. The vast chamber was in chaos. Huge sections of the ceiling had collapsed, and the emergency force fields were flickering erratically, struggling to maintain the hangar's atmosphere. Through the gaps, Daniel could see the swirling destruction of the asteroid field beyond, punctuated by flashes of weapons fire from the ongoing battle. Their shuttle sat on the far side of the hangar, its engines already cycling up thanks to Cora's swift action. But between them and their escape lay a treacherous field of debris and failing infrastructure. As Daniel began to pick his way across the hazardous terrain, a new tremor shook the base. He stumbled, nearly losing his grip on Dr. Zex. When he regained his footing, he saw with horror that a massive section of the ceiling was beginning to give way directly above their shuttle. Time seemed to slow as Daniel watched the debris start to fall. He knew that if the shuttle was crushed, they would have no way off the doomed asteroid. In that moment, he made a decision that could very well cost him his life. With a surge of adrenaline, Daniel sprinted towards the shuttle, pushing his augmented body to its absolute limits. He could feel his muscles screaming in protest, the weight of Dr. Zek's threatening to slow him down. As he ran, Daniel's mind raced through calculations of speed, distance, and timing. He knew he couldn't reach the shuttle before the debris hit, but if he could just get close enough. With a final burst of speed, Daniel hurled Dr. Zek's unconscious form towards the shuttle's open hatch. The Ventaxian scientist sailed through the air, his trajectory just barely clearing the falling debris. Daniel saw Cora's startled face appear in the hatch, her hands reaching out to catch Dr. Zek. But he had no time to feel relief. The collapsing ceiling was now directly above him, tons of metal and composite materials hurtling downwards. In the split second before impact, Daniel dove forward, tucking into a roll. The debris crashed down behind him. Missing him by mere centimeters, he could feel the rush of displaced air on the back of his neck as he tumbled across the hangar floor. When he came to a stop, Daniel found himself in a small pocket of space, surrounded on all sides by the fallen debris. The shuttle was tantalizingly close, but now a wall of twisted metal separated him from his escape. As the dust settled, Daniel heard Cora's voice calling out to him, muffled by the debris. He took a deep breath, assessing his options. The base was falling apart around them, and he was trapped. But Daniel Coleman had not come this far to fail now. With dogged grit, he began to search for a way through the debris field, knowing that every second counted. The fate of 2 civilizations and countless lives still hung in the balance, and Daniel was not about to let them down. Down! The fate of 2 civilizations and countless lives still hung in the balance, and Daniel was not about to let them slip away. His eyes darted around the debris field, searching for any possible means of escape. Suddenly, his gaze fell upon a familiar shape half buried beneath the wreckage. It was a Ventaxian maintenance exosuit, likely thrown from its storage bay during the collapse. Daniel's mind raced with the possibilities it presented. Without hesitation, he scrambled towards the suit, ignoring the protests of his battered body. As he reached it, he could hear Cora's voice growing more urgent through the barrier of debris. "Daniel, we're running out of time. The hangar's force fields are failing." "I've got a plan," he shouted back, already working to free the exosuit from the rubble. "Just be ready to move." With a final heave, Daniel pulled the suit free. It was massive, designed for the larger Ventaxian physiology, but he didn't have time to worry about the fit. He quickly began the process of donning the suit, fumbling with the unfamiliar clasps and seals. As the exosuit closed around him, Daniel felt a sharp pain lance through his skull. The neural interface, calibrated for Ventaxian brains, struggled to connect with his human nervous system. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus through the discomfort. The suit's systems flickered to life, and Daniel experimentally flexed its mechanical limbs. The movements were jerky and uncoordinated at first, but his quick mind began to adapt, finding ways to compensate for the mismatch between human and Ventaxian physiology. With a surge of effort, Daniel directed the exosuit to grab a large piece of debris. The servos whined in protest, but the metal slowly began to move. He worked frantically, clearing a path through the wreckage, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through his body as the neural interface strained to keep up. As he worked, he could hear Cora's voice again, this time speaking in low, urgent tones. He caught fragments about stabilizing Dr. Zek's and something about the Nexus key, but he couldn't afford to split his focus. The base continued to shake around them, and Daniel could hear the ominous sound of explosive decompressions in nearby sections. The exosuit systems were beginning to overheat, causing his muscles to cramp and his vision to blur. But he pushed on, driven by the knowledge that their lives depended on his success. Finally, Daniel cleared the last of the major obstacles. He could see the shuttle now, tantalizingly close. But as he moved to call out to Cora, a violent tremor rocked the hangar. He looked up in horror to see a massive section of the ceiling breaking free, plummeting towards the princess and the unconscious scientist. Without thinking, Daniel lunged forward. The exosuit responded sluggishly to his commands, but he managed to position himself over Cora and Dr. Zex just as the debris came crashing down. The impact was tremendous, and Daniel felt something give way in the suit's structure. Warning alarms blared in his ears as the exosuit's integrity was compromised, but it had done its job. Cora and Dr. Zex were unharmed. "We need to move now," Daniel gasped, his voice strained with pain and effort. Together, they half-carried, half-dragged Dr. Zex towards the shuttle. Daniel's movements grew increasingly erratic as the neural interface began to cause minor seizures, each step a battle against his own body. They stumbled into the shuttle, Daniel barely conscious as he collapsed to the floor. Cora immediately moved to the controls, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar human technology as she prepared for an emergency launch. "Daniel," she called out, her voice thick with concern. "The exosuit, we need to get you out of it." He tried to respond, but another seizure racked his body. Cora abandoned the launch preparations and rushed to his side. Her eyes widened as she took in the complexity of the Ventaxian technology, far more advanced than the human design she was used to. "Hold on," she muttered, her scales shifting to a deep, concentrated blue. "I can do this." With careful precision, Cora began to disconnect the neural interface. Each severed connection sent a jolt through Daniel's system, but gradually, the pain began to subside. As the last connection was broken, Daniel gasped, feeling as though he'd surfaced from deep water. A thunderous crash echoed through the hangar, and Cora's head snapped up. "We're out of time," she said, sprinting back to the controls. The shuttle's engines roared to life as the hangar began to collapse around them. Cora's hands danced over the controls, guiding the craft out of the disintegrating structure. They burst free of the asteroid base just as it imploded, the shockwave catching them and sending the shuttle into a wild spin. As Cora fought to stabilize their flight path, a new problem arose. The Nexus key, jostled by their violent escape, began to pulse with strange energy. The shuttle systems flickered and sparked, affected by the artifact's power. "The key," Daniel croaked, struggling to his feet. "It's destabilizing." Cora's eyes darted between the malfunctioning systems and the pulsing artifact. Her scales rippled with a mix of persistence and fear as she made a split-second decision. With swift movements, she began to interface the Nexus key with the shuttle's power systems. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked, stumbling towards a co-pilot's seat. "Trying to balance the energy output," Cora replied, her voice tense with concentration. "If I can synchronize it with our systems, it might stabilize both." As Cora worked, Daniel's attention was drawn to the viewport. His blood ran cold as he saw the scene unfolding before them. The human Ventaxian fleet was engaged in a fierce battle with the asteroid base's remaining automated defenses, and they were flying right into the middle of it. "Cora," he said urgently, "we've got another problem." "Problem," Daniel finished, his voice tight with urgency. Cora's head snapped up from her work on the Nexus key, her scales shifting to a pale yellow of alarm as she took in the chaotic scene outside. The shuttle was hurtling towards a maelstrom of laser fire and explosions, caught between the human Ventaxian fleet and the asteroid base's automated defenses. "Hold on," she shouted, her hands flying over the controls. The shuttle banked hard, narrowly avoiding a stray missile. Daniel gripped his seat, fighting against the G-forces as Cora expertly weaved through the battlefield. A proximity alarm blared, and Daniel's eyes widened as he saw a piece of debris spinning towards them. "Cora, 3 o'clock." The princess reacted instantly, deploying the shuttle's emergency shields. The debris glanced off the energy barrier, sending a tremor through the craft. Alarms continued to sound as the shuttle system struggled to cope with the strain. The key's energy is still interfering with our systems, Cora said through gritted teeth. I can't get a clean signal to the fleet. Daniel's mind raced. The interference. Can we use it to our advantage? Cora's eyes lit up with understanding. If we modulate the key's energy output, we might be able to create a cloaking effect. Working in tandem, Daniel and Cora quickly reconfigured the shuttle's power systems. The Nexus key pulsed with an eerie light as they channeled its energy. Suddenly, the alarms fell silent, and the weapons fire outside seemed to pass right through them. It's working, Daniel breathed, watching as enemy targeting systems failed to lock onto their now-cloaked shuttle. With their immediate danger averted, Cora plotted a course towards a human Ventaxian flagship. As they approached, Daniel sent out a coded transmission to identify themselves and request emergency docking. The shuttle slipped into the flagship's hangar bay just as the Nexus key's energy began to fluctuate wildly. The moment they touched down, a team of human and Ventaxian personnel swarmed the craft. Daniel tried to stand, but a wave of dizziness washed over him. The last thing he saw was Cora's concerned face before darkness claimed him. When Daniel regained consciousness, he found himself in the flagship's medical bay. The sterile white walls and soft beeping of medical equipment slowly came into focus. He blinked, trying to orient himself. "Welcome back, Mr. Coleman," a voice said beside him. Daniel turned to see a Ventaxian physician standing nearby, his scales a calm blue. Dr. Zelos. Daniel recognized the chief medical officer. "How long was I out?" "Approximately 18 hours," Dr. Zelos replied. "The neural interface from the exosuit caused significant stress on your nervous system. We've been working to counteract the effects." As Daniel's vision cleared further, he noticed Princess Cora standing at the foot of his bed, her multifaceted eyes filled with relief. "You had us worried, Daniel," she said softly. Dr. Zelos approached, holding a datapad. "While your quick thinking saved your lives, the incompatible neural interface did cause some damage. We've developed a treatment plan combining human medical techniques with Ventaxian healing technology. It should expedite your recovery." Daniel nodded, then turned to Cora. "The Nexus key? Dr. Zex?" Cora's scales rippled with a mix of emotions. "The key is secure in a specially designed containment unit. A joint team of human and Ventaxian scientists are monitoring its energy signature. As for Dr. Zex, he's still unconscious but stable. He's under constant guard in a high-security medical ward." Before Daniel could ask more questions, the door to the medical bay slid open. Admiral Jarvis, the human leader of the Joint Fleet, and High Commander Zorn of the Ventaxian forces entered. "Mr. Coleman," Admiral Jarvis said, his voice grave, "we need to debrief you on the events at the asteroid base. Can you walk?" Daniel swung his legs off the bed, testing his strength. "I think so, sir." As they made their way to the briefing room, Daniel could feel the tension in the air. The implications of what they had discovered threatened to upset the delicate balance of human-Ventaxian relations. In the briefing room, Daniel provided a detailed account of their mission, emphasizing the dangers posed by Dr. Zex's weapons program and the potential power of the Nexus key. The commanding officers listened intently, their faces growing more serious with each revelation. Just as Daniel finished his report, an urgent communication came through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of King Zyrax of Ventax Prime. "I demand an immediate audience," the Ventaxian monarch declared. "The human Daniel Coleman, Princess Cora, and your fleet's leadership are to report to Ventax Prime without delay." As the transmission ended, Admiral Jarvis turned to the others. "Prepare for faster-than-light jump to Ventax Prime. We leave in 1 hour." Daniel exchanged a glance with Cora, both of them acutely aware that the next few days would shape the future of human-Ventaxian relations. As the flagship's crew scrambled to prepare for the journey, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were far from finished. As the flagship prepared for its jump to Ventax Prime, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling towards a pivotal moment in human-Ventaxian relations. The journey passed in a blur of medical treatments and strategy sessions. By the time they arrived in Ventax Prime's orbit, Daniel had regained much of his strength, though he still felt the lingering effects of the neural interface. As the fleet began its descent towards the planet's surface, Daniel stood beside Princess Cora on the flagship's observation deck. The swirling greens and purples of Ventax Prime's atmosphere gave way to a landscape of towering crystal spires and sprawling bioluminescent forests. "I never thought I'd see a human ship land on our world," Cora said softly, her scales shimmering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the rapidly approaching ground. "It's a historic moment for both our species." The flagship touched down in a vast clearing, surrounded by a sea of curious Ventaxians. As the loading ramp lowered, Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself for what lay ahead. King Zyrax stood at the head of a delegation, his regal bearing unmistakable even from a distance. As Daniel and Cora descended the ramp, flanked by Admiral Jarvis and High Commander Zorn, a hush fell over the crowd. Cora moved forward first, embracing her father in a formal Ventaxian greeting. The king's scales rippled with relief and pride as he held his daughter close. Then, to Daniel's surprise, King Zyrax turned to him. The Ventaxian monarch's multifaceted eyes studied Daniel intently before he raised his hand in a gesture that Daniel recognized from his cultural briefings, a Ventaxian salute of deep respect. "Daniel Coleman," King Zyrax's voice carried across the clearing, "Ventax Prime owes you a great debt. Your actions have saved countless lives and preserved the peace between our peoples." Daniel bowed his head, acutely aware of the thousands of eyes upon him. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what was necessary to protect both our species." As the formalities concluded, Daniel's attention was drawn to a heavily guarded transport vehicle. Inside, he knew, was a containment unit housing the Nexus Key. A team of scientists, both human and Ventaxian, swarmed around it, their excitement palpable even from a distance. One Ventaxian scientist in particular caught Daniel's eye. Her scales shimmered with an intensity he'd never seen before, shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors as she directed the unloading of the key. "That's Dr. Alara," Cora whispered, noticing Daniel's interest. "She's the leading expert on theoretical energy patterns. If anyone can unravel the mysteries of the Nexus Key, it's her." Before Daniel could respond, a commotion erupted near the medical transport. He turned to see Dr. Zex, heavily restrained and surrounded by guards, being escorted from the ship. The scientist's eyes locked onto Daniel, and a chill ran down his spine. "I need to speak with him," Dr. Zex called out, his voice hoarse but insistent. "Coleman, there's more you need to know." King Zyrax's head snapped towards a commotion, his scales darkening with anger. He conferred briefly with his advisors before approaching Daniel. "It seems Dr. Zex is eager to speak with you," the king said, his voice low. "Given your unique perspective on this situation, I believe it would be valuable for you to conduct the interrogation. Are you willing?" Daniel nodded, squaring his shoulders. "Of course, Your Majesty. I'll do whatever I can to uncover the full extent of this conspiracy." As Daniel prepared himself for the challenging task ahead, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn his life had taken. Here he was, a human on an alien world, about to interrogate a brilliant but dangerous scientist who had nearly plunged two species into war. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but he felt oddly calm. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it head-on. With a final glance at Cora, who offered him an encouraging nod, Daniel followed the guards escorting Dr. Zex to the high-security facility where the interrogation would take place. As they walked, He could hear the excited murmurs of the crowd, feel the curious gazes of countless Ventaxians, and sense the shifting political landscape beneath his feet. The future of human-Ventaxian relations hung in the balance, and Daniel knew that his next actions could tip the scales one way or the other. With each step, he steeled himself for the mental battle ahead, knowing that extracting the truth from Dr. Zex would require every ounce of skill and dedication he possessed. As Daniel steeled himself for the interrogation, an urgent message crackled through his comm device. "Coleman, this is Admiral Jarvis. We've detected an unidentified ship entering Ventax Prime's orbit. Report to the Planetary Defense Center immediately." Daniel's pulse quickened as he changed course, following a Ventaxian guard to the heart of the planet's military command. He found Princess Cora and King Zyrax already there, their scales shimmering with a mix of anticipation and concern. The massive view screen before them displayed a sleek vessel unlike anything in human or Ventaxian fleets. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence, defying easy categorization. "What do we know?" Daniel asked, his eyes fixed on the mysterious craft. Before anyone could answer, the ship broadcast a wideband transmission. The message echoed through the command center in multiple languages, including both human and Ventaxian dialects. "Greetings, people of Earth and Ventax Prime. We are a diplomatic envoy from the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of spacefaring civilizations. We have observed your recent conflict and cooperation, and deem you ready for official contact and potential membership." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Daniel turned to King Zyrax, who seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "Your Majesty," Daniel said quietly, "I recommend responding with caution but openness. It's similar to human first contact protocols." The Ventaxian king nodded, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. He stepped forward, activating the communication array. "Greetings, envoys of the Galactic Confederation. We welcome you to Ventax Prime and are honored by your interest in our peoples. We invite a small delegation to land near our capital city for further discussions." As King Zyrax spoke, Daniel whispered to Princess Cora, "We should implement a joint human-Ventaxian security detail. It's crucial we present a united front." Cora nodded, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'll coordinate with our forces and your Admiral Jarvis." As preparations for the diplomatic encounter unfolded, Dr. Alara burst into the command center, her scales flashing with vibrant colors of discovery. "Your Majesty, Daniel," she said breathlessly, "I've made a breakthrough with the Nexus Key. Its energy signature matches ancient legends of the Cosmic Beacon, a device our ancestors supposedly used to communicate with distant civilizations." Daniel's mind raced with the implications. This could be crucial information for our talks with the Confederation. We should integrate it into our diplomatic strategy. King Zyrax agreed, his posture straightening with newfound confidence. Indeed, this connection to our past may prove valuable in negotiations. As the Confederation ship began its descent, alarms blared throughout the command center. A security officer approached, his scales pale with alarm. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. Dr. Zex has escaped custody." Daniel sprang into action, his training kicking in. "I'll organize a search party. We'll combine human tracking techniques with Ventaxian surveillance tech." As he moved to leave, Princess Cora caught his arm. "Daniel, this timing can't be a coincidence. What if there's a connection to the Confederation's arrival?" He met her gaze, nodding grimly. "You're right. We need to heighten security around the landing site and key facilities. Can you handle that while I track down Zex?" Cora's scales shifted to a determined orange. "Consider it done." Daniel assembled a mixed team of human and Ventaxian operatives, briefing them as they moved out. "Our target is highly intelligent and potentially augmented. Stay alert and report any unusual energy signatures." As they swept through the capital, Daniel's mind whirled with possibilities. The escaped scientist, the ancient artifact, the arrival of an intergalactic alliance. It all seemed too interconnected to be chance. Their search led them to the outskirts of the capital, where abandoned industrial complexes loomed like skeletal remnants of a bygone era. Daniel's scanner picked up faint energy readings similar to the Nexus key. There, he pointed to a dilapidated structure. Zex must be inside. As they approached, Daniel's comm device crackled to life. Princess Cora's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Daniel, the Confederation ship has landed. 3 delegates, each a different species. We're commencing introductions now." "Understood," Daniel replied, his eyes never leaving the building before him. "Be careful, Cora. Something about this doesn't feel right." With hand signals, Daniel directed his team to surround the structure. As they moved into position, he caught glimpses of frantic movement through grimy windows, a makeshift lab, hastily assembled equipment, and at the center of it all, Dr. Zex. The Ventaxian scientist was hunched over a device that pulsed with an ominous energy. Daniel's breath caught as he recognized components similar to the weapon from the asteroid base. "We need to move now," he whispered into his comm. "Zex is building something, and I don't think we want to see it finished." As his team prepared to breach, Daniel's mind raced. Whatever was happening inside that building, whatever Dr. Zex was planning, it was clear that the fate of human-Ventaxian relations, and perhaps their place in a much larger galactic community, hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Daniel gave the signal. The team burst through the doors, weapons raised, as Dr. Zex's head snapped up in shock. The confrontation that would shape the future of 2 worlds was about to begin. The tension in the air was palpable as Daniel and his team burst through the doors, their weapons trained on the startled figure of Dr. Zex. The Ventaxian scientist's eyes widened in shock, his scaled hands frozen over a pulsing device that bore an unsettling resemblance to the weapon from the asteroid base. For a fraction of a second, the scene was frozen in a tableau of surprise and confrontation. Then everything exploded into action. Dr. Zex lunged for the device, his augmented body moving with unnatural speed. Daniel, acting on instinct and training, closed the distance in 3 rapid strides. He executed a series of precise strikes, targeting the pressure points he learned during his time on Ventax Prime. His fist connected with a spot just below Dr. Zex's left shoulder, causing the scientist's arm to spasm and drop away from the controls. A quick jab to a point near the base of the Ventaxian skull disrupted his equilibrium, sending him stumbling back. With Dr. Zex momentarily incapacitated, Daniel turned his attention to the device. Its energy signature was rapidly building, the air around it shimmering with almost unchecked power. Daniel's mind raced, recalling schematics and technical data from both human and Ventaxian sources. His fingers flew over the alien controls, identifying familiar patterns amidst the foreign design. He rerouted power from the main core, bypassing overloaded circuits and shutting down key systems. The device's ominous hum began to diminish, its pulsing glow fading to a dull flicker. A movement in his peripheral vision was all the warning Daniel had. He ducked, feeling the whoosh of air as Dr. Zex's fist sailed over his head. The Ventaxian scientist had recovered faster than expected, his augmentations compensating for the pressure point strikes. Daniel pivoted, using his smaller size and greater agility to his advantage. He weaved and dodged, staying just out of reach of Dr. Zex's augmented strength. As they grappled, Daniel managed to activate his comm device, his fingers finding the right sequence by touch alone. "Cora," he gasped out between defensive maneuvers, "potential infiltration. Confederation delegation. Exercise caution." He didn't have time to say more as Dr. Zex pressed his attack. Daniel found himself on the defensive, forced to rely on every bit of his training to avoid being overwhelmed by the Ventaxians' enhanced capabilities. In the diplomatic chamber across the city, Princess Cora received Daniel's cryptic warning. Her scales rippled with concern, but she maintained her composure, not wanting to alert the Confederation representatives to any potential issue. With a subtle gesture, she signaled the joint human Ventaxian security team to increase their alert status. Then, she smoothly steered the conversation towards more detailed introductions of the Confederation delegates. Perhaps, she suggested with a warm smile that belied her inner tension, we could learn more about your individual roles within the Confederation. It would help us understand the structure of your alliance better. As the delegates began to elaborate on their positions, Cora observed them closely, searching for any signs of deception or hidden agendas. Back in the industrial complex, Daniel finally saw an opening in Dr. Zex's relentless assault. He dropped low, sweeping the Ventaxian's legs out from under him. As Dr. Zex stumbled, Daniel surged upward, using a combination of human martial arts and Ventaxian grappling techniques to lock the scientist in a hold that negated his augmented strength. With a final, calculated application of pressure, Daniel felt Dr. Zex go limp in his arms. He quickly secured the unconscious scientist with specialized restraints designed to counteract Ventaxian augmentations. Breathing heavily, Daniel turned back to the device. Its energy signature had stabilized, but he knew that simply powering it down wasn't enough. The technology itself was too dangerous to risk falling into the wrong hands. Making a split-second decision, Daniel began to initiate a controlled overload of the device's power core. His fingers danced over the controls, carefully balancing the energy flow to ensure the critical components would be rendered useless without causing a catastrophic explosion. As the device began its final, harmless fizzle, Dr. Zex stirred. Daniel knelt beside him, his expression grim. "It's over, Doctor," he said firmly. "Now, tell me about your connections to the Confederation. Who are you working with?" Realizing the failure of his plan, Dr. Zex's shoulders slumped in defeat. "There's a faction within the Confederation," he began, his voice a mixture of resignation and lingering defiance. "They believe that emerging species like humans and Ventaxians are a threat to galactic stability. They wanted to provoke a war between our peoples, to prove their point." Daniel recorded the confession, his mind racing with the implications. "And the Nexus Key? What's its role in all this?" Dr. Zex's multifaceted eyes gleamed with a hint of their old fervor. "It's more powerful than you can imagine. The faction believes it could be used to control or even eliminate troublesome species. They promised me access to technologies beyond my wildest dreams if I could secure it for them." As Daniel processed this information, he heard the approach of security forces. He stood, surveying the now harmless device and the restrained Dr. Zex. "Secure the prisoner in this entire area," he ordered as Ventaxian and human operatives entered the room. "I need to get this information to the diplomatic team immediately." With one last glance at the scene of his narrowly averted disaster, Daniel set off for the capital at a run. The fate of two worlds, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on what would happen next in that diplomatic chamber. His heart pounding and mind racing with the implications of what he'd just learned. As he burst through the ornate doors, all eyes turned to him, conversations halting mid-sentence. King Zyrax rose from his seat, scales shifting to a concerned purple. "Daniel, what is the meaning of this interruption?" Daniel strode forward, his gaze sweeping over the assembled dignitaries. He spotted Princess Cora and Captain Lyra, their expressions a mix of confusion and alarm. "Your Majesty, we have a critical situation," Daniel said, his voice low but urgent. He approached the king and leaned in close, speaking quietly. "Dr. Zex has been neutralized, but he revealed a conspiracy within the Confederation. We may have infiltrators in this very room." King Zyrax's eyes widened, but he maintained his composure. With a subtle nod, he signaled to Captain Lyra, who immediately began coordinating with the security team. Daniel turned to address the room, his tone carefully measured. "Esteemed delegates, I apologize for the interruption. We've uncovered some information that requires our immediate attention. For everyone's safety, we'll need to conduct additional security screenings." As he spoke, Captain Lyra and her team moved swiftly and efficiently, deploying advanced scanning devices that merged human and Ventaxian technology. The air hummed with energy as the scanners swept over the delegates. Princess Cora stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "While we complete these routine checks, perhaps we could take a brief recess. It would give us all a chance to refresh ourselves before continuing our discussions." The delegates murmured in agreement, though Daniel noticed a flicker of unease cross the face of one, a tall, angular being he now knew as Zorn. As the others filed out, Daniel caught Captain Lyra's eye and gave a subtle nod toward Zorn. Lyra's team focused their scans on the delegate, and within moments, their devices lit up with warning signals. Daniel's suspicions were confirmed. Zorn was carrying an undisclosed communication device. King Zyrax, informed of the development, called for an official recess. As the delegates dispersed, Princess Cora smoothly approached Zorn. "Delegate Zorn, I've been fascinated by your culture's approach to interspecies exchange programs," she said, her scales shimmering with an inviting blue-green. "Would you mind joining me for a private discussion on the matter? We have a lovely consultation room just adjacent to this chamber." Zorn hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "It would be my pleasure, Princess Cora." As they entered the secure room, Daniel and Captain Lyra followed close behind. The moment the door sealed shut, they sprang into action. Lyra's team swiftly disarmed and restrained the startled delegate, while Daniel secured the hidden communication device. "What is the meaning of this?" Zorn sputtered, his elongated limbs struggling against the restraints. Daniel held up the confiscated device. "I think you know exactly what this means, Delegate Zorn. Or should I say, agent of the cosmic purists?" Zorn's alien features contorted in a mix of shock and defiance. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. The cosmic purists are more powerful than you can imagine." While Lyra's team secured Zorn, Daniel worked with a joint human-Ventaxian technical unit to analyze the communication device. Its sophisticated design allowed for long-range, undetected transmissions, perfect for coordinating covert operations. As data streamed across the holographic displays, Daniel's suspicions were confirmed. The device contained encrypted messages detailing the cosmic purist plans to sabotage the human-Ventaxian alliance and prevent their entry into the Galactic Confederation. Armed with this evidence, King Zyrax reconvened the diplomatic session. The remaining Confederation delegates were visibly shaken as Zorn was brought before them, restrained and under heavy guard. Zal, the lead Confederation delegate, stepped forward. His multifaceted eyes reflected a mix of shock and persistence. "On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I offer our deepest apologies. We had suspicions of internal discord, but never imagined it ran so deep. We offer our full cooperation in rooting out this threat." King Zyrax nodded gravely. "We appreciate your candor, Delegate Zal. Our alliance with humanity has already proven its worth in uncovering this plot. Together, we stand ready to face this challenge." As a gesture of good faith, Zal granted access to Confederation databases. Daniel, working alongside Captain Lyra and a team of analysts, began the arduous task of sifting through the vast trove of information. Hours passed in a blur of data streams and holographic projections. As they cross-referenced the Confederation data with their own intelligence, a disturbing pattern emerged. Cosmic purist agents had embedded themselves throughout human and Ventaxian space, lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. Daniel's fingers flew over the holographic interface, correlating data points and tracking movement patterns. Suddenly, he froze, his eyes widening as he spotted an anomaly. "Captain Lyra, look at this," he called out, zooming in on a sector of space near one of Ventax Prime's moons. "There's an energy signature here that doesn't match any known installation. It's been masked, but the Confederation data helps fill in the gaps." Lyra leaned in, her scales shifting to a focused gray. A hidden outpost. It must be a staging area for their planned attack. Daniel nodded grimly. "And based on these readings, they're gearing up for something big. We need to alert planetary defenses immediately." As alarms blared across Ventax Prime's military installations, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. The cosmic purists had gone to great lengths to infiltrate both human and Ventaxian societies. But why? What was their ultimate goal? As he pondered these questions, Princess Cora burst into the command center, her scales flashing with excitement. "Daniel, I have an idea. What if we use the Nexus key as bait?" Daniel turned to her, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Cora's eyes gleamed with grit. "We create a false announcement about a breakthrough with the key. Something that would force the cosmic purists to act. It could draw them out, give us a chance to neutralize the threat once and for all." As Daniel considered the plan, alarms blared once again. On the main view screen, multiple signals appeared, converging on Ventax Prime from all directions. The cosmic purists had made their move, and the battle for the future of both humanity and the Ventaxians was about to begin. The human Ventaxian fleet mobilized swiftly, their ships streaking across the sky in a dazzling display of united strength. As the fleet engaged the hostile forces, Daniel's attention snapped to a sudden alert on the main view screen. A massive energy surge erupted from an unidentified source, its intensity threatening to overwhelm the system's defenses. "Captain Lyra," Daniel called out, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "I've isolated the source. It's a satellite in high orbit, previously masked by some kind of cloaking technology." Lyra's scales shifted to a deep, focused purple as she absorbed the information. "Understood. I'm redirecting a portion of our fleet to intercept and neutralize the threat." As Lyra coordinated the fleet's movements, Princess Cora burst into the command center, her scales shimmering with excitement and urgency. "Daniel, Dr. Alara and I have made a discovery about the energy patterns from the Cosmic Purist device." Daniel turned to her, his eyes questioning. "What have you found?" "The surge is creating gravitational anomalies throughout the system," Cora explained, her voice tight with concern. "It's endangering both our ships and the planets themselves." Dr. Alara, a brilliant Ventaxian scientist, stepped forward. "We believe the Nexus key might be able to counteract these effects if we can calibrate it correctly." King Zyrax, who had been silently observing the unfolding crisis, spoke up. "The risks are great, but we have no choice. I authorize the use of the Nexus key." Daniel's mind raced, weighing the potential dangers against the looming threat. "I'll oversee the operation personally," he declared, locking eyes with Princess Cora. "We need to move the key to a secure location where we can safely channel its energy." As Daniel assembled a team of human and Ventaxian engineers, alarms blared throughout the facility. A group of cosmic purist infiltrators, using advanced cloaking technology, had breached the outer defenses and were closing in on their position. Daniel's combat instincts kicked in. He quickly organized the defenders into a tight perimeter around the Nexus key, barking out orders to both human and Ventaxian soldiers. The air crackled with energy as the first wave of attackers struck. Daniel ducked behind a console, returning fire with his plasma rifle. As he fought, he noticed something peculiar about the Cosmic Purist weapons. "Dr. Alara," he shouted over the din of battle. "They're weapons. They're emitting an energy signature similar to the orbital device." The Ventaxian scientist's eyes widened with realization. She immediately began adjusting the Nexus key's calibration, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Outside the facility, the space battle raged. The combined human-Ventaxian fleet unleashed a devastating barrage against the cosmic pure satellite. Their coordinated assault finally penetrated its formidable defenses, but not before the device released a final, massive energy pulse. Daniel watched in horror as the pulse created a shockwave that threatened to tear apart Ventax Prime's atmosphere. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. "Activate the Nexus key now," he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "But the calibration isn't complete," Dr. Alara protested. "We're out of time," Daniel responded grimly. "Do it." The ancient artifact hummed to life, emitting a powerful energy field that began to stabilize the gravitational anomalies. But the strain proved too much for the partially calibrated key. It started to destabilize, its energy output fluctuating wildly. Daniel knew what he had to do. He rushed to the Nexus key's containment unit, pushing past the protests of his team. With steady hands, he began manually adjusting the key's output, drawing on every ounce of his knowledge of both human and Ventaxian technology. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked, his movements a blur of precision and intuition. The key's energy pulsed through him, each adjustment sending shocks of pain through his body. As Daniel fought to stabilize the Nexus key, Princess Cora led the defense against the remaining cosmic purist infiltrators. Her voice rang out clear and strong, rallying both human and Ventaxian soldiers. "Stand firm," she cried, her scales flashing with dedication. "We fight not just for Ventax Prime, but for the future of both our peoples." Outside, Captain Lyra coordinated the planetary defense forces with ruthless efficiency. She employed a brilliant strategy that combined human stealth technology with Ventaxian energy weapons, creating an impenetrable defense grid around the planet. In orbit, Admiral Jarvis watched as the cosmic purist satellite finally succumbed to the human Ventaxian assault. Its destruction triggered a cascading failure in the remaining enemy ships. "All vessels, this is Admiral Jarvis," he broadcast. "Target enemy engines and weapon systems. I want those ships disabled and ready for boarding. There are answers aboard those vessels, and we're going to get them." Back in the facility, Daniel's efforts to stabilize the Nexus key reached a critical point. The artifact's energy output spiked dangerously, threatening to overload and destroy everything in its vicinity. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Daniel placed his hands directly on the key's surface. He gasped as raw energy surged through his body, using himself as a living conduit to channel the excess power. The gambit worked. The Nexus key's output stabilized, its energy spreading out to neutralize the gravitational anomalies threatening Ventax Prime. But the cost was high. Daniel felt his consciousness slipping away as the energy coursed through him. His last sight before darkness took him was Princess Cora rushing to his side, her scales a kaleidoscope of fear and concern. As Daniel collapsed, the immediate crisis began to subside. The human-Ventaxian alliance had prevailed, but at what cost? Questions about the extent of the cosmic purist infiltration and the long-term consequences of the energy surge remained unanswered. In the medical bay, doctors worked frantically to save Daniel's life. Princess Cora stood vigil, her eyes never leaving the monitors that tracked his vital signs. As she watched, she couldn't help but wonder, what new challenges awaited them in the aftermath of this hard-won victory? Victory, as her eyes remained fixed on Daniel's unconscious form, the medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity. Human and Ventaxian doctors swarmed around Daniel, their voices a cacophony of urgent commands and rapid-fire medical jargon. The air crackled with the hum of advanced medical equipment as they fought to stabilize his condition. Severe energy burns covering 60% of his body, a human doctor called out, her hands moving swiftly over a holographic display of Daniel's vital signs. A Ventaxian healer, His scales, a pale green of focused concentration, applied a shimmering gel to Daniel's scorched skin. Initiating cellular regeneration protocol, he announced, his multifaceted eyes tracking the slow progress on a nearby monitor. Princess Cora stood at the foot of Daniel's bed, her scales shifting between anxiety-ridden gray and determined blue. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above Daniel's hand, afraid to touch him for fear of causing more pain. "Your Highness," a soft voice interrupted. Cora turned to see her royal advisor, his scales a respectful beige. "The king requests your presence for an emergency meeting with the Confederation delegates." Cora's scales flashed a defiant red. "I'm not leaving him," she stated, her voice leaving no room for argument. The advisor bowed slightly. "I understand, Your Highness. I'll inform the king of your decision." As the advisor left, Cora's attention returned to Daniel. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths, each one a small victory in his fight for survival. In the Grand Council chamber, King Zyrak stood before a diverse gathering of beings. Confederation delegates, their forms ranging from vaguely humanoid to utterly alien, sat alongside human representatives. The atmosphere was tense, filled with unspoken questions and lingering fears. King Zyrax's voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. The threat we face today was not just against Ventax Prime or humanity, but against the very ideals of cooperation and unity that the Galactic Confederation stands for. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled dignitaries. "It is clear that we must take decisive action to prevent such attacks in the future. I propose the formation of an interspecies task force, combining the strengths of human, Ventaxian, and loyal Confederation forces." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Admiral Jarvis, representing the human fleet, stepped forward. His weathered face was grim as he activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. "We've analyzed the data recovered from the captured cosmic purist ships," Jarvis began. The hologram shifted, showing a sprawling network of hidden bases and sleeper agents spread across nearby star systems. "Their organization is more extensive than we initially believed." As the implications of this revelation sank in, Dr. Alara burst into the chamber, her scales a vibrant orange of excitement. "Your Majesty, esteemed delegates, I have urgent news regarding the Nexus Key." All eyes turned to the Ventaxian scientist as she quickly made her way to the holographic display. With a few deft movements, she brought up a new set of data. "The key's energy signature has changed," she explained, her voice tight with controlled excitement. When Daniel interfaced with it, something unprecedented occurred. The artifact's properties had been altered, possibly due to interaction with his human physiology. The chamber erupted into a flurry of questions and exclamations. King Zyrax raised a hand, silencing the commotion. "Dr. Alara, what are the implications of this discovery?" The scientist's scales shifted to a thoughtful purple. "It opens up entirely new avenues for research and potential applications of the key's power. We may be on the brink of technological advancements beyond our current understanding." As the meeting continued, strategies were debated and alliances were forged. The recent battle had proven the strength of human Ventaxian cooperation, and now, faced with the extensive threat of the cosmic purists, that bond would be tested further. Days passed, and Daniel's condition slowly improved. The advanced medical treatments began to show results, his burns healing at an accelerated rate. Princess Cora remained a constant presence at his bedside, leaving only when absolutely necessary for her royal duties. On the fifth day, as the first rays of Ventax Prime's twin sun streamed through the medical bay windows, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. His gaze, unfocused at first, slowly settled on Cora's face. "Hey there, Princess," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Cora's scales exploded into a brilliant array of colors, joy and relief radiating from her entire being. "Daniel, you're awake." As Daniel struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement, Cora gently pressed him back down. "Easy now, hero. You've been through quite an ordeal." Daniel's brow furrowed as fragmented memories of the battle flashed through his mind. The Nexus key. Did it work? Is everyone safe? Cora nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. "Thanks to you, yes. You saved Ventax Prime Daniel. You're a hero to both our peoples." Before Daniel could respond, a commotion outside the medical bay caught their attention. Captain Lyra burst in, her scales a mix of urgent gray and cautious yellow. "Your Highness, we've detected a massive fleet entering the system," Lyra reported, her voice tense. "Initial scans show ships from various Confederation species, but their intentions are unclear." Daniel attempted to rise again, his face set with willpower despite the pain. "We need to prepare for a potential attack," he said, gritting his teeth. Cora placed a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder. "You need to rest and recover. We'll handle this." As Cora and Lyra quickly left to address this new development, Daniel fell back against his pillow, frustration evident on his face. He knew the battle was just the beginning, and now, more than ever, he felt the weight of his role in this interstellar conflict. Outside the medical bay, alarms began to blare as the Ventaxian defense systems detected the approaching fleet. The hard-won peace was once again under threat, and the newly forged Human-Ventaxian alliance faced its next great challenge. The alarms blaring throughout the medical bay jolted Daniel fully awake, adrenaline surging through his system. He pushed himself up, ignoring the sharp pain that lanced through his body. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hoarse but filled with urgency. A young Ventaxian nurse, her scales a nervous yellow, approached his bed. "A massive fleet has entered the system, so they appear to be from various Confederation species, but their intentions are unknown." Daniel's mind raced, analyzing the implications of this new development. He knew that the recent battle had likely drawn attention from across the galaxy, but the speed of this response was unexpected. Before he could formulate a plan, the door to his room slid open, revealing King Zyrax himself. The Ventaxian monarch's scales were a mix of regal purple and cautious gray. "Daniel Coleman," King Zyrax said, his voice carrying the weight of his position, "I'm afraid we must ask for your expertise once again, despite your condition." Daniel nodded, already trying to swing his legs off the bed. "Of course, Your Majesty. What do you need?" "The Galactic Unity Front has requested a meeting at the neutral space station orbiting our outermost moon," King Zyrax explained. "We need your insight into both human and Ventaxian diplomacy for this crucial negotiation." As Daniel attempted to stand, his legs buckled beneath him. The Ventaxian nurse quickly moved to support him, her scales shifting to a concerned blue. "He's in no condition to travel," she protested, looking to the king. King Zyrax's expression softened slightly. "I understand, but the stakes are too high. We need him there." Dr. Vex, the chief Ventaxian physician, entered the room, his scales a thoughtful green. "Perhaps we can find a compromise," he suggested. "We've been developing a mobile life support unit that combines human and Ventaxian medical technology. It could allow Daniel to attend the meeting while continuing his treatment." Daniel's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "That sounds perfect. How soon can it be ready?" "We can have it prepared within the hour," Dr. Vex replied, already tapping commands into a nearby console. As the medical team bustled around him, preparing the mobile unit, Daniel's mind turned to the upcoming meeting. The delicate balance of interstellar politics hung in the balance, and he knew that every word, every gesture would be crucial. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the medical bay, causing equipment to rattle and alarms to blare even louder. Captain Lyra burst into the room, her scales a vibrant red of battle readiness. "Your Majesty, we have a security breach in the Nexus Key facility," she reported, her voice taut with tension. "A group of cosmic purist sleeper agents has infiltrated the complex. They're attempting to steal the artifact." King Zyrax's scales darkened with anger. "How did they evade our security sweeps?" "Unknown, sir," Lyra replied. "But I've mobilized a response team. We're combining human stealth tactics with our energy weapons to corner them." Daniel struggled to his feet, ignoring the protests of the medical staff. "We can't let them get their hands on the key. The damage they could do with it is unimaginable." As if in response to his words, a pulse of energy suddenly washed over them. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency backup systems kicked in moments later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. What was that? King Zyrax demanded, his scales now a mix of alarm and confusion. Dr. Vex, who had been monitoring the situation on his portable device, looked up with wide eyes. "The Nexus key has been activated. That pulse just disabled electronic systems throughout the palace." Daniel's mind raced, connecting the dots. "This changes everything. We can't proceed with the meeting now. We need to deal with this internal threat first." King Zyrax nodded grimly. "Agreed. Captain Lyra, coordinate with human security forces. I want those infiltrators found and neutralized." As Lyra saluted and rushed out, Daniel turned to Dr. Vex. "Doctor, I have an idea. The Nexus key's energy signature. Can we use it to identify any remaining cosmic purist agents?" Dr. Vex's scales shifted to a thoughtful purple. "Theoretically, yes. We could modify our detection devices to scan for traces of the key's energy on individuals. It would allow for a thorough sweep of the palace and surrounding areas." "Do it," King Zyrax ordered. "And Daniel, I want you to oversee this operation from the command center. Your unique connection to the key could prove invaluable." As the mobile life support unit was quickly assembled around him, Daniel felt a mix of dedication and apprehension. The battle for Ventax Prime was just getting started, and he knew that the next few hours would be critical in shaping the future of both human and Ventaxian civilizations. With the support of the medical team, Daniel was soon encased in the sleek, hybrid technology of the mobile unit. As they made their way towards the command center, the sounds of distant energy weapons and shouts echoed through the palace corridors. The hunt for the cosmic purist agents had begun in earnest. Entering the command center, Daniel was immediately struck by the organized chaos before him. Holographic displays showed real-time updates of the ongoing security sweep, while communication channels buzzed with constant chatter between different teams. Princess Cora stood at the center of it all, her scales a determined blue as she coordinated the palace's response. Her eyes widened as she saw Daniel enter in his mobile unit. "Daniel, should you be here?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. He managed a weak smile. "No choice, Princess. We need every advantage we can get right now." As Daniel was briefed on the situation, Dr. Alara burst into the room, her scales a vibrant orange of excitement. "Your Highness, I've completed the modifications to the detection device. We're ready to begin the sweep." Princess Cora nodded sharply. "Excellent work, Doctor. Let's put it to use immediately." As the newly modified devices were distributed to security teams throughout the palace, Daniel felt a sudden surge of energy course through him. His connection to the Nexus key seemed to intensify, and with it came a startling realization. "Wait," he called out, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "I can sense them. The cosmic purist agents. I can feel their presence through the key's energy." All eyes in the command center turned to him, a mix of hope and skepticism on their faces. Daniel closed his eyes, focusing on the strange sensations flowing through him. In his mind's eye, he could see pulsing points of energy scattered throughout the palace complex. "There," he said, pointing to a holographic display of the palace layout. 3 agents in the East Wing, near the archives. 2 more in the lower levels, possibly heading for the escape tunnels. Captain Lyra, who had just returned from the field, immediately began issuing orders based on Daniel's information. All units, converge on these locations. Use caution. These agents are likely to be heavily armed and desperate. As the security teams moved to intercept the identified agents, a new face entered the command center. A tall, battle-scarred Ventaxian with scales of deep navy blue strode in, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Commander Zax reporting, Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly to Princess Cora. "I've been working undercover to root out cosmic purist influence within our ranks. I believe I can be of assistance in this operation." Princess Cora's scales flashed with surprise before settling into a grateful green. "Your timing is impeccable, Commander. We need all the help we can get." As Commander Zax was quickly brought up to speed, the first reports of engagement with the cosmic purist agents began to flood in. The combination of human stealth tactics and Ventaxian energy weapons proved highly effective, but the agents fought with the desperation of those who knew they had nothing left to lose. Daniel, still connected to the Nexus Key's energy, continued to provide real-time information on the agent's movements. His body trembled with the strain, sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed himself to maintain the connection. "Daniel," Dr. Vex warned, monitoring his vital signs closely, "you need to take it easy. Your body can't handle this level of stress in your condition." But Daniel shook his head, gritting his teeth against the pain. "We can't stop now. We're so close to rooting them all out." As the operation continued, Princess Cora received an urgent communication from the Galactic Unity Front. Their patience was wearing thin, and they demanded an explanation for the delay in the planned meeting. Cora's scales shifted to a determined blue as she addressed the holographic projection of the Unity Front's representative. "I assure you, esteemed delegate, that we are dealing with an urgent security matter. We ask for your patience and understanding as we purpose this internal threat to ensure the safety of all parties involved in our upcoming discussions." Her measured response and transparent communication seemed to placate the delegate, at least temporarily. As she ended the transmission, Cora let out a sigh of relief. "Well handled, Your Highness," Commander Zax commented, his tone respectful. "But we need to wrap this up quickly. We can't keep them waiting much longer." Daniel, still connected to the Nexus Key's energy, suddenly tensed. "There's one more," he said, his voice strained. "In the throne room. They're trying to access the Royal Secure Communications Array." Commander Zax's scales darkened. "If they succeed, they could compromise our entire defense network. I'll handle this one personally." As the commander rushed out, Daniel felt his connection to the key begin to fade. The strain on his body had become too much, and he could feel himself slipping towards unconsciousness. "Daniel!" Princess Cora's voice seemed to come from far away. "Stay with us. We need you." But the darkness was encroaching on his vision, and Daniel felt himself falling. As he lost consciousness, his last thought was of the battle still raging around them, and the hope that his efforts had been enough to turn the tide. The command center erupted into frantic activity as medical staff rushed to stabilize Daniel's condition. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, long-range sensors detected a small group of ships breaking away from the Galactic Unity Front's fleet, heading towards Ventax Prime at high speed. Their energy signatures matched those of known cosmic purist vessels. The battle for Ventax Prime was about to enter a new, even more dangerous phase, and the Alliance would have to face it without their key strategist. As Princess Cora looked from Daniel's unconscious form to the approaching enemy ships on the tactical display, she knew that the true test of the human Ventaxian alliance was only just beginning. As Princess Cora looked from Daniel's unconscious form to the approaching enemy ships on the tactical display, She knew that the true test of the human-Ventaxian alliance was only just beginning. The command center erupted into frenzied activity as alarms blared, signaling the approach of the cosmic purist vessels. Captain Lyra's voice cut through the chaos, her scales flickering with perseverance as she barked orders. All defense units, battle stations. Activate the Nexus key-based weapons grid. Prepare for incoming hostiles. The newly developed weapons hummed to life, their energy signatures pulsing in sync with the planetary defense grid. As the first wave of cosmic purist ships entered weapons range, Lyra's multi-layered strategy unfolded. Fire at will, she commanded. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from Ventax's prime surface and orbital platforms, catching the enemy vessels off guard. Several cosmic purist ships faltered, their systems disabled by the unfamiliar energy signatures. Others broke formation, scattering to avoid the barrage. In the midst of the chaos, Daniel stirred. His eyes fluttered open, consciousness returning just as the battle reached its crescendo. Princess Cora was at his side in an instant. "Daniel, we need you," she urged, her scales shifting to a mix of relief and concern. Despite the fatigue evident in his features, Daniel's mind was already racing. He surveyed the tactical displays, his unique understanding of both human and Ventaxian combat tactics, allowing him to see patterns where others saw only chaos. "There," he pointed, his voice hoarse but steady. "There's shield generators. They're cycling power to compensate for our new weapons. If we time our attacks to coincide with the power fluctuations." Captain Lyra didn't need to hear more. She relayed the information to the defense grid operators, and within moments, the Alliance's fire became devastatingly precise. Cosmic purist ships began to fall, their shields failing under the onslaught. On the ground, Commander Zax led his team to the palace corridors, their footsteps echoing off the ornate walls. Human stealth technology rendered them nearly invisible, while Ventaxian energy weapons hummed with lethal potential. "Contact," Zax whispered as his sensors picked up movement ahead. Infiltrators attempting to access the main power relay. With practiced precision, Zax's team moved into position. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense, energy blasts illuminating the corridor in a dazzling display. When the smoke cleared, the cosmic purist agents lay neutralized, their sabotage attempt thwarted. Back in the command center, Dr. Alara burst in, her scales a vibrant orange of excitement. "Your Highness, I've done it. We can create localized wormholes using the Nexus Key's energy signature." King Zyrax's eyes widened at the implications. "How soon can we implement this?" "Immediately," Alara replied, already moving to interface her device with the command center systems. As the space battle intensified, the Alliance put this new technology to use. Ships and resources blinked in and out of existence across the battlefield, redeploying faster than the cosmic purists could react. The tide of battle began to shift. Amidst the chaos, a priority transmission cut through. Princess Cora's holographic form materialized, her expression tense. "Father, we have a situation at the neutral space station. Cloaked ships are approaching. I suspect a trap." Before King Zyrax could respond, sensors blared a new warning. A massive shape, decloaked near Ventax Prime's innermost moon, a cosmic purist dreadnought of unprecedented size. Daniel leaned forward, studying the readings. That weapon. It could destabilize the planet's core. Our current defenses won't be enough. A heavy silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. It was King Zyrax who broke it, his scales darkening with the weight of his decision. "Dr. Alara, begin the process of channeling the Nexus Key's energy into our defense grid. We have no choice but to use it as a weapon." As Alara and her team rushed to comply, Daniel's mind raced. The connection he felt to the Nexus Key pulsed stronger than ever, and with it came a flash of inspiration. "Wait," he called out, struggling to his feet despite the protests of the medical staff. "I have an idea. We can use Dr. Alera's wormhole technology to teleport a strike team directly onto that dreadnought. Take down its shields from the inside." Commander Zax, who had just returned from a successful defense of the palace, nodded approvingly. A bold plan, but who could lead such a mission? Daniel met the commander's gaze steadily. "I will." The room erupted into objections, but Daniel stood firm. "I'm the only one who understands both our technologies and has a connection to the Nexus Key. It has to be me." King Zyrax studied Daniel for a long moment before nodding gravely. "Very well. Prepare your team, Daniel Coleman. The fate of Ventax Prime may rest on your shoulders." As the command center buzzed with preparations for the daring mission, the battle outside reached a fever pitch. Alliance ships engaged in furious dogfights above the planet, while ground forces repelled wave after wave of enemy dropships. Commander Zax's voice crackled over the comms. "We've discovered a network of underground tunnels. The cosmic purists are using them to bypass our shields. We're moving to intercept." In orbit, Captain Lyra's voice joined the chorus of battle reports. "Taking heavy fire, using our disabled ships as cover, requesting immediate backup at orbital platform Alpha." Daniel, now suited up and ready for teleportation, took in the swirling chaos around him. Dr. Alera made final adjustments to the wormhole device, her scales flickering with nervous energy. "This technology is still experimental," she warned. "Be prepared for anything." As Daniel stepped onto the teleportation platform with his strike team, a final transmission came through. Princess Cora's voice was filled with urgency. "Daniel, listen carefully. The Galactic Unity Front representatives have provided crucial intelligence. The Cosmic Purist command structure has weaknesses. If you can—" Her voice cut off as the wormhole device hummed to life. Daniel felt the familiar pull of the Nexus Key's energy, stronger now than ever before. As the world around him began to blur and shift, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and the next few moments would determine everything. With a final surge of energy, Daniel and his team vanished from the teleportation chamber, hurtling through space towards the heart of the enemy dreadnought. The world shifted and blurred around Daniel and his team as the experimental wormhole device engaged. For a heart-stopping moment, they existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither here nor there. Then, with a sudden lurch, reality snapped back into focus. They materialized in a dimly lit corridor aboard the Cosmic Purist dreadnought. The air crackled with ozone, an aftereffect of their unconventional arrival. Before anyone could catch their breath, alarms blared to life, bathing the hallway in pulsing red light. "Intruder alert! All security personnel to Deck 7, Section C." A mechanized voice echoed through the ship's intercom system. Daniel's mind raced, processing the unfamiliar environment. He gestured to his team, a mix of human special forces and Ventaxian elite guards. "Move! We need to find cover before." His words were cut short as energy bolts sizzled past, scorching the bulkhead behind them. Cosmic Purist defenders had arrived, their weapons already primed and firing. The strike team sprang into action. Sarah, a human operative, rolled to the side, taking cover behind a protruding conduit. Her rifle barked, the sound echoing in the confined space. Two Purist soldiers fell, their armor no match for the advanced weaponry. Zarek, a Ventaxian guard, moved with fluid grace. His scales shifted to match the metallic walls, providing a measure of camouflage. He advanced, energy pistol thrumming as he laid down suppressing fire. Daniel coordinated their movements, his unique understanding of both human and Ventaxian tactics, allowing him to maximize their effectiveness. "Sarah, Zarek, push forward. Tren, cover our 6. They fought their way through the corridors, a deadly dance of energy beams and kinetic rounds. The ship's layout was a maze of twisting passageways and sealed bulkheads, but Daniel's enhanced connection to technology allowed him to interface with the ship's systems, guiding them towards their objective. As they neared a junction, Daniel held up a closed fist. The team halted, tense for action. A moment later, a squad of battle droids rounded the corner, their energy shields humming. "New targets," Daniel shouted, diving for cover as the droids opened fire. Their energy weapons were more potent than those of their organic counterparts, leaving scorch marks on the deck plating. The team's weapons proved ineffective against the droid shields. Daniel's mind raced, analyzing the energy signatures. "Adjust your weapons. Frequency modulation Delta 7. As his team recalibrated their guns, Daniel provided covering fire. His shots didn't penetrate the shields, but the impacts forced the droids to recalculate their targeting algorithms, buying precious seconds. With their weapons adjusted, the strike team's next volley tore through the droids' defenses. Mechanical bodies clattered to the deck, sparks flying from ruptured circuits. They pressed on, fighting through waves of defenders. The ship's layout became more familiar as they approached the engineering section. Daniel's connection to the ship's systems grew stronger, allowing him to manipulate security protocols and misdirect enemy reinforcements. Finally, they reached the main engineering bay. The massive door loomed before them, sealed tight against intruders. Daniel placed his hand on the access panel, his enhanced neural pathways interfacing directly with the ship's computer. Lines of code flashed through his mind as he bypassed security measures and overrode lockdown protocols. With a hiss of hydraulics, the door slid open. The engineering bay was a cathedral of technology. Towering reactors pulsed with terrifying energy, while banks of computers monitored every aspect of the ship's operations. At the center stood the shield generator, a marvel of engineering that combined cosmic purist technology with principles derived from the Nexus key. As they secured the room, Daniel approached the main control console. His fingers danced across the interface, but the system resisted his attempts to shut down the shields. "It's no use," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "The shield generator is isolated from the main computer network. I can't disable it from here." Sarah surveyed the room, her tactical mind assessing options. "Can we destroy it physically?" Daniel shook his head. "The energy output is too high. A direct attack would likely trigger a catastrophic overload, destroying the ship and us with it." Zarek's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. "What about the computer core? Could you interface directly with it?" Daniel hesitated, knowing the risks such an action would entail. The raw data flowing through the ship's systems could overwhelm his mind, causing permanent damage. But as he felt the subtle vibrations of the dreadnought's weapon powering up, he realized they were out of options. "Cover me," he said, moving towards a neural interface station. "I'm going in." As Daniel connected to the computer core, his consciousness expanded. The ship's systems flooded his mind, a torrent of data threatening to sweep away his sense of self. He gritted his teeth, using every ounce of willpower to stay focused on his objective. Distantly, he heard the sounds of battle as his team defended his prone form. But those sensations faded as he delved deeper into the dreadnought's operating system, searching for a way to bring down the shields and stop the weapon from firing. Time seemed to lose all meaning as Daniel navigated the alien architecture of the ship's computer. Each moment felt like an eternity, filled with the agonizing pressure of too much information crammed into his brain. Just as he felt his grip on reality slipping, he found it, a backdoor hidden deep within the system's code. With a surge of effort, Daniel seized the opportunity. He initiated a cascade failure in the shield generator, watching with a sense of detached wonder as the massive energy barrier protecting the ship flickered and died. The backlash hit him like a physical blow. Daniel's consciousness was violently ejected from the system, leaving him gasping and disoriented on the cold deck of the engineering bay. Through blurred vision, he saw a brilliant beam of energy lance out from Ventax Prime, striking the dreadnought with devastating precision. The ship shuddered, and warning klaxons blared as systems began to fail. "We did it," Daniel mumbled, struggling to his feet. "The shields are down and the weapon is neutralized." His team gathered around him, supporting his unsteady form. Sarah's voice came as if from a great distance. "We need to move, Daniel. The bridge. We have to secure it before they can regroup." Daniel nodded, forcing his battered mind to focus. As they made their way towards the command center of the massive ship, he could feel his strength ebbing. The strain of interfacing with the dreadnought systems, combined with his earlier exertions, was taking its toll. They fought their way through scattered pockets of resistance, the cosmic purists now in disarray, without their shields or main weapon. As they approached the bridge, Daniel's steps faltered. His vision swam, the world around him becoming hazy and indistinct. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the determined faces of his team as they prepared to breach the bridge and confront the cosmic purist leader. Then consciousness fled, and Daniel knew no more. His body went limp, supported only by his team's quick reactions. "Daniel!" Sarah cried, catching him as he collapsed. She looked to Zarek, her eyes wide with concern. "We need to get him out of here now." The Ventaxian guard nodded, his scales shifting to a deep purple of worry. "Agreed. I'll contact command for immediate extraction." As Zarek relayed their situation, Sarah checked Daniel's vital signs. His pulse was weak and erratic, his breathing shallow. The strain of interfacing with the alien technology had clearly taken a severe toll on his system. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. The Alliance's counterattack had begun in earnest, now that the dreadnought's shields were down. The strike team knew their window for escape was rapidly closing. "Extraction point secured," Zarek announced. "We need to move." With practiced efficiency, they secured Daniel and began their retreat. The once orderly corridors of the dreadnought were now in chaos, filled with panicked Cosmic Purist crew members and malfunctioning systems. The strike team fought their way back to their entry point, where a shuttle was waiting to ferry them to safety. As they boarded the shuttle, a medical team was already waiting. Dr. Vex, a renowned Ventaxian physician, immediately began assessing Daniel's condition. "His neural patterns are highly unstable," Dr. Vex reported, his tendrils waving in agitation. "We need to get him to the medical facility on Ventax Prime immediately." The shell detached from the failing dreadnought, racing away as explosions bloomed across its hull. Inside, the medical team worked feverishly to stabilize Daniel. Human life support systems hummed alongside Ventaxian energy-based healing devices, creating a symphony of advanced medical intervention. Despite their efforts, Daniel's vital signs continued to fluctuate dangerously. His body, pushed beyond its limits by the alien interface, struggled to maintain basic functions. Dr. Vex administered a series of targeted energy pulses, attempting to realign Daniel's neural pathways. "Stay with us, Daniel," Sarah whispered, holding his hand tightly as the medical team worked. The shuttle streaked through space, pushing its engines to the limit. As they entered Ventax Prime's atmosphere, the pilot received priority clearance to land directly at the planet's most advanced medical facility. Upon touchdown, a team of human and Ventaxian doctors was waiting. They whisked Daniel away on a hovering gurney, rushing him into the facility's specialized treatment wing. Dr. Vex briefed the waiting medical staff as they moved. "Patient has suffered severe neural shock from prolonged exposure to alien technology. Recommend immediate placement in the Nexus-enhanced healing chamber." The medical team nodded in agreement, their movements precise and coordinated as they transferred Daniel into a gleaming, pod-like structure. The chamber hummed to life, bathing Daniel in a soft, golden glow that pulsed with the same unique energy signature as the Nexus key. As the doctors worked to save Daniel's life, events continued to unfold rapidly across Ventax Prime. Princess Cora's shuttle touched down at the royal palace, fresh from her successful negotiations with the Galactic Unity Front. She strode purposefully into the command center, ready to brief her father on the new alliance. However, her triumphant return was cut short as an aide rushed to her side, whispering urgently in her ear. The princess's eyes widened, and without a word, she turned and sprinted towards her personal transport. Minutes later, Princess Cora burst into the medical facility, her royal authority clearing a path to Daniel's treatment room. She found Sarah there, keeping vigil outside the healing chamber. "How is he?" Cora asked, her voice tight with worry. Sarah shook her head. "It's touch and go. The doctors say the next few hours will be critical." Cora moved closer to the chamber, placing a hand on its smooth surface. Inside, Daniel's face was pale and drawn, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The princess closed her eyes, silently willing him to recover. As Daniel fought for his life, the Alliance wasted no time in capitalizing on their victory. In the captured Dreadnought's computer core, Commander Zax led a team of human and Ventaxian analysts in sifting through the vast trove of intelligence. "Look at this," one of the human analysts called out, pointing to a series of encrypted transmissions. "These appear to be communications between multiple hidden bases." Zax leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data. "Excellent work. This could be the key to unraveling the entire Cosmic Purist network." As the intelligence team worked, King Zyrax convened an emergency council meeting. The Grand Chamber was filled with a mix of human and Ventaxian officials, all acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. "We have dealt the Cosmic Purists a significant blow," the king began, his voice carrying across the room. "But we must not grow complacent. Their threat remains, and we must act decisively." Admiral Brown, newly arrived from Earth with reinforcements, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I propose we form a joint task force to hunt down and neutralize the remaining Cosmic Purist strongholds." The council chamber buzzed with discussion as the implications of the suggestion were debated. Captain Lyra, her hologram projected from her ship in orbit, added her voice to the conversation. "Admiral Brown's expertise in asymmetric warfare could be invaluable in this fight," she said. "I recommend we begin developing new strategies immediately." As the Alliance's leadership planned their next moves, Dr. Alara worked tirelessly in her lab. The capture of the Cosmic Purist Dreadnought had provided her with a wealth of new data on the Nexus Key's capabilities. "Fascinating," she muttered, her scales rippling with excitement as she pored over the latest test results. "If we can harness this energy signature, we might be able to create a network of stable wormholes. The strategic implications are enormous." Back in the medical facility, Daniel's condition began to show signs of improvement. The Nexus-enhanced healing chamber pulsed with energy, slowly bringing his neural patterns back into alignment. Princess Cora, who had refused to leave his side, noticed his eyelids fluttering. "Daniel," she called softly, hope rising in her chest. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, but gradually sharpening as they settled on Cora's face. A weak smile tugged at his lips. "Did we win?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Cora laughed, tears of relief springing to her eyes. "Yes, Daniel. Thanks to you, we won this battle. But there's still much to be done." As Daniel's strength slowly returned, the Alliance continued to press its advantage. The intelligence gathered from the Dreadnought was proving invaluable, revealing the locations of hidden Cosmic Purist bases and supply lines. Commander Zax, working closely with human special forces, began planning a series of surgical strikes against these targets. The captured Cosmic Purist leader, Admiral Zorn, was subjected to intense interrogation. Initially defiant, the Admiral's dedication began to crack under the combined pressure of human and Ventaxian questioning techniques. Slowly, crucial information about the cosmic purist's organizational structure and long-term plans began to emerge. As the days passed, the medical team gradually reduced Daniel's sedation, allowing him longer periods of consciousness. During these times, he provided valuable insights into the cosmic purist technology he had encountered while interfacing with the Dreadnought systems. Their neural interface is incredibly advanced, Daniel explained to a group of attentive scientists and military personnel gathered around his bed. But it's also their weakness. If we can develop countermeasures, we could potentially disable their entire fleet. Dr. Lara, who had joined the briefing, nodded thoughtfully. This aligns with my research on the Nexus Key. Perhaps we could use its energy signature to create a disruptive field. As the Alliance consolidated its gains and prepared for the next phase of the conflict, a sense of cautious optimism began to spread. However, the threat of cosmic purist retaliation loomed large, and everyone knew that the hardest battles might still lie ahead. In his healing chamber, Daniel's strength continued to grow. He could feel the Nexus Key's energy coursing through him, repairing the damage caused by his interface with the alien technology. As he recovered, his mind raced with new ideas and strategies. The next phase of the war against the cosmic purists was about to begin, and Daniel was determined to be at the forefront of the fight. Battle. The fire in Daniel's eyes matched the dedication in Princess Cora's voice. "You're right," he said, sitting up straighter in the healing chamber. "We've won a crucial victory, but the cosmic purists are still out there. We need to capitalize on this momentum." Over the next few days, as Daniel's strength returned, the Alliance wasted no time in implementing their new strategies. Commander Zax assembled a joint human Ventaxian special operations team, handpicking 5 human operatives and 5 Ventaxian elite guards for a critical mission. Their target: a hidden cosmic purist research facility nestled within a treacherous asteroid belt on the outskirts of the Ventaxian system. Intelligence gathered from the captured Dreadnought and Admiral Zorn's interrogation had pinpointed its location. As the team prepared for departure, Daniel briefed them on the facility's significance. "This could be where they're reverse engineering alien tech," he explained, his voice still slightly hoarse from his ordeal. "If we can secure it, we'll deal another blow to their capabilities." Commander Zax nodded, his scales shifting to a determined blue. "We'll use a combination of human stealth technology and our energy-based propulsion systems to navigate the asteroid field undetected." The team boarded their specially modified craft, a sleek vessel that seemed to shimmer as it engaged its stealth systems. As they departed, Daniel watched from the command center, his fingers flying over holographic displays as he coordinated with Princess Cora to provide real-time intelligence support. Meanwhile, in another sector of space, Admiral Brown and Captain Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship, overseeing a massive fleet engagement. The cosmic purists had attempted to regroup, amassing a formidable force in a nearby star system. Enemy ships detected on long-range scanners, a sensor officer reported. "They're forming up in a defensive array." Admiral Brown's eyes narrowed. "Perfect. Captain Lyra, initiate Operation Quantum Leap." Lyra nodded, her hologram flickering slightly as she relayed orders to her ship and the rest of the fleet. Suddenly, a series of wormholes burst into existence around the cosmic purist formation, courtesy of Dr. Lara's breakthrough research. Alliance ships poured through the wormholes, executing rapid flanking maneuvers that caught the enemy completely off guard. The space around them lit up with weapons fire as the battle commenced. Back on Ventax Prime, Daniel worked tirelessly with Princess Cora in the newly established Joint Intelligence Unit. Holographic displays surrounded them, each one streaming data from various Alliance operations. "Look at this pattern," Cora said, pointing to a series of encrypted transmissions. "It's similar to what we saw in the Dreadnought's logs, but there's something different. Daniel leaned in, his eyes widening as he recognized the significance. It's a fail-safe protocol. They're routing all high-level communications through a central hub. Their eyes met, a spark of excitement passing between them. If we can trace this back to its source, Cora began. We might find their central command structure, Daniel finished. As they worked to pinpoint the location, reports came in from Commander Zax's team. They had successfully infiltrated the asteroid facility, bypassing energy barriers and automated defenses through a combination of human ingenuity and Ventaxian energy manipulation. We're in, Zax's voice crackled over the comm. You won't believe what we've found here. It's a massive laboratory complex. They're working on something big, possibly related to the Nexus Key. Daniel relayed the information to King Zyrax, who immediately grasped its importance. The king's hologram appeared in the intelligence center, his expression grave. We must act on this intelligence immediately, Zyrax declared. Daniel, Princess Cora, I'm authorizing a high-risk operation. We're going to strike at the heart of the Cosmic Purist organization. As plans for this crucial mission took shape, Dr. Alara burst into the room, her scales pulsing with excitement. We've done it, she exclaimed. We've established a stable, long-range wormhole connecting Ventax Prime to Earth. The implications of this achievement were enormous, dramatically reducing travel time between the Allies and opening up new possibilities for cooperation. Almost immediately, the first wave of human civilians and scientists began arriving on Ventax Prime. Daniel watched from a viewpoint as construction crews, both human and Ventaxian, worked together to build joint research facilities and living quarters. The sight of the two species collaborating filled him with a sense of hope and purpose. As the Alliance continued to press its advantage, word of their successes spread. A delegation from the Galactic Unity Front arrived on Ventax Prime, opening formal negotiations for the potential inclusion of both humans and Ventaxians in the larger galactic community. Amidst this flurry of diplomatic activity, Daniel and Princess Cora focused on their upcoming mission. They pored over intelligence reports, strategizing with Admiral Brown and Captain Lyra to coordinate their assault on the Cosmic Purist Central Command. As they finalized their plans, a troubling piece of information came to light. Daniel's face paled as he read the report. Princess, he said, his voice tight with concern. We have a problem. Intelligence suggests the Cosmic Purists have obtained an artifact similar to the Nexus Key. Cora's eyes widened. If that's true, the consequences could be catastrophic. We need to move fast. With renewed urgency, they accelerated their preparations. Ships and troops began gathering near the newly established wormhole terminal, ready to launch a multi-pronged assault on the Cosmic Purist stronghold. As Daniel and Princess Cora boarded the command ship, the weight of their responsibility settled on their shoulders. The outcome of this mission would determine not just the fate of their alliance, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. The command ship's engines thrummed to life as Daniel took his position at the tactical station. Princess Cora stood beside him, her presence a comforting reminder of how far they had come together. All ships report ready, the communications officer announced. Daniel exchanged a determined look with Cora. Then let's finish this, he said, his voice steady and resolute. As the fleet prepared to depart, Daniel couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and apprehension. They were about to confront their most formidable enemy yet, with the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. The Cosmic Purist Central Command awaited, and with it, the next chapter in their interstellar struggle. As the fleet prepared to depart, Daniel felt the HVS Unity come to life beneath his feet. The ship, a marvel of human Ventaxian engineering, hummed with barely held back power. All systems operational, reported the ship's AI, its voice a blend of human and Ventaxian tones. Wormhole coordinates locked. Daniel exchanged a nod with Princess Cora. This is it, he said, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. Fleet Command, initiate jump sequence. The space before them shimmered and tore open, revealing the swirling vortex of the wormhole. One by one, the ships of the Alliance fleet entered the anomaly, disappearing in flashes of light. As the HVS Unity plunged into the wormhole, Daniel gripped his console tightly. The ship shuddered around them, reality itself seeming to stretch and twist. Then, with a final lurch, they emerged on the other side. The scene that greeted them was one of instant chaos. The Cosmic Purist Defense Force, forewarned of their arrival, had arrayed itself in a formidable defensive formation. Energy beams and missiles crisscrossed the void, creating a deadly web of fire. Evasive maneuvers, Princess Cora shouted as a barrage of enemy fire streaked towards them. The Unity's pilot responded instantly, the ship rolling and diving with impossible grace. Daniel's fingers flew across his tactical display, coordinating with Admiral Brown's support vessel. Implementing attack pattern Zeta 3, he called out. On the main view screen, Alliance ships began to break formation, executing a series of complex maneuvers designed to fracture the enemy's defensive line. The comms crackled to life with Commander Zax's voice. Strike team ready for deployment. Breaching pods primed and awaiting your signal. You have a go, Commander, Daniel responded, watching as a cluster of small, sleek pods detached from one of the Alliance cruisers and rocketed towards a Cosmic Purist Command ship. The battle raged around them, a tapestry of light and destruction. Daniel and Princess Cora worked in perfect synchronization, their minds melding with the Unity systems as they directed the flow of combat. Energy spike detected, called out a sensor officer, reading massive power build up from the lunar surface. Daniel's heart leapt. Dr. Alera's team had activated their energy transmitter. As he watched, a pulsating blue field spread across the battlefield. The effect on the Cosmic Purist ships was immediate and dramatic. Their shields flickered and wavered, creating openings in their once impenetrable defense. Now's our chance, Princess Cora said, her eyes locked on the tactical display. There's a weakness forming in their left flank. Daniel nodded, quickly relaying orders to a squadron of human Ventaxian fighters. The nimble craft darted to the opening, penetrating deep into enemy territory. On the main view screen, they watched as Captain Lyra's dropships descended towards the Cosmic Purist stronghold. Anti-aircraft fire lit up the planet's atmosphere, claiming several ships in fiery explosions. But the majority pressed on, breaking through to the surface. Ground forces deployed, reported Captain Lyra, her voice tight with tension. Encountering heavy resistance, pushing towards the central complex. As the battle progressed, Daniel found himself marveling at the seamless integration of human and Ventaxian forces. Where once there had been mistrust and misunderstanding, now there was only fluid cooperation and shared purpose. A triumphant shout from the comm station drew his attention. Commander Zax's team has secured the enemy command ship. Incoming data transmission. Daniel and Princess Cora pored over the incoming intelligence, quickly incorporating it into their battle plans. With this new information, they were able to direct their forces with surgical precision, slowly but surely tightening the noose around the Cosmic Purist stronghold. Just as victory seemed within reach, alarms blared across the Unity's bridge. Massive energy surge detected within the central complex. A sensor officer shouted, his voice edged with panic. Daniel's blood ran cold as he interpreted the readings. The Cosmic Purists were activating their Nexus key device, and the power levels were off the charts. If left unchecked, it could tear apart the very fabric of space-time. He exchanged a look with Princess Cora, seeing his own grip mirrored in her eyes. Without a word, they both knew what had to be done. "Helm, take us in," Daniel ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're going planetside." The Unity broke away from the main fleet, diving towards the planet's surface. Enemy fire intensified. focusing on the lone ship as it plunged through the atmosphere. The vessel shuddered and groaned under the assault, but its advanced shields held. As they neared the surface, Daniel spotted a clearing not far from the central complex. "There," he said, pointing it out to the pilot. "Set us down there." The ship touched down hard, its landing struts digging deep furrows in the alien soil. Before the dust had even settled, Daniel was on his feet, Princess Cora at his side. "Assemble the strike team," he ordered as they made their way to the airlock. "We're going in." As the airlock cycled open, Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The sounds of battle filled the air, the sharp crack of energy weapons, the dull thud of explosions, the whine of engines overhead. He stepped out onto the alien world, Princess Cora beside him, their hand-picked team of human and Ventaxian special forces fanning out around them. In the distance, the central complex loomed, a dark monolith against the war-torn landscape. Daniel checked his weapon, then nodded to Cora. "Let's finish this," he said, and together they set off towards the heart of the enemy's stronghold, the fate of 2 worlds and perhaps the entire galaxy, hanging in the balance. Balance. The team moved swiftly across the alien terrain, their footsteps muffled by the chaos of battle raging around them. As they approached the central complex, a squad of cosmic purist elite guards emerged from a concealed entrance, their augmented bodies gleaming with cybernetic enhancements. Daniel barely had time to shout a warning before the air crackled with energy blasts. Princess Cora reacted instantly, her hands weaving intricate patterns as she manipulated the energy around them. A shimmering barrier sprang into existence, deflecting the first volley of attacks. "Push forward," Daniel called out, leading the charge. He ducked under a guard's swing, using his enhanced reflexes to sidestep the attack and deliver a precise counterstrike to the alien's midsection. The team engaged in close-quarters combat, a deadly dance of human martial arts and Ventaxian energy manipulation. Princess Cora moved with fluid grace, her royal combat training evident as she disarmed one guard after another. Daniel found himself back-to-back with a Ventaxian Special Forces operative, their movements synchronized as they fought off the augmented opponents. The air hummed with the discharge of energy weapons and the clash of physical blows. A stray energy blast struck a nearby control panel, sending sparks flying. The panel erupted in a shower of electricity, triggering a cascading failure in the facility's security systems. Explosions rocked the complex, destabilizing the structure around them. Daniel saw their opportunity. "Cora!" he shouted over the din of battle and falling debris. "There's our opening." The princess nodded, understanding immediately. Together, they led a charge through the weakened security perimeter, their team following close behind. They fought their way past the remaining guards, sustaining minor injuries but pressing forward with unwavering focus. As they breached the inner sanctum of the facility, Daniel's eyes locked onto a tall, gaunt alien figure hunched over a central console. Dr. Zarian, the lead cosmic pure scientist, his body a grotesque fusion of organic matter and cybernetic enhancements. The scientist's hands flew across the controls, and Daniel realized with a jolt of horror what was about to happen. "He's activating the device," he yelled, lunging forward. Daniel tackled Dr. Zarian just as the alien's finger hovered over the final activation sequence. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs, human and alien. Princess Cora sprinted toward the device's power source, her hands already glowing with channeled energy. But they were too late to stop it entirely. Dr. Zarian managed to partially activate the Nexus key-like device, and the air in the room began to shimmer and distort. A localized energy field sprang into existence, warping the very fabric of space-time around them. Objects began to float, defying gravity. Temporal fluctuations rippled through the room, causing equipment to age rapidly or revert to earlier states. Daniel felt a sickening lurch in his stomach as the ground beneath him seemed to shift and twist. We need to shut it down. Princess Cora called out, her voice distorted by the temporal anomalies. She was struggling against the fluctuating gravity, trying to reach the device's controls. Daniel grappled with Dr. Zarian, fighting to keep the scientist from fully activating the device. The cybernetically enhanced alien was unnaturally strong, his grip like iron as they struggled for control. A burst of static filled the room as Commander Zax's voice crackled over their comm units. Coleman, we've secured the enemy command ship. What's your status? Daniel managed to activate his comm while fending off a vicious blow from Dr. Zarian. We're in the inner sanctum. The device is partially active. We need support. Commander Zax's response was immediate. Understood. Initiating targeted strike on the facility's outer defenses. Hold on. The complex shuddered as Commander Zax's team unleashed a barrage from the captured Cosmic Purist ship. The assault provided much-needed support, keeping enemy reinforcements at bay. Princess Cora created an energy shield around Daniel, protecting him from the worst of the temporal distortions. He nodded his thanks, then turned his full attention to the device's control panel. Drawing on his knowledge of the Nexus key, gained from his previous exposure, Daniel began the risky process of attempting a manual override. His fingers flew across the alien interface, his mind racing to decipher the complex systems. Outside, Captain Lyra's joint human Ventaxian ground forces made significant progress against the Cosmic Purist defenses. They secured key strategic points around the complex, cutting off potential escape routes and reinforcement lines. Inside the inner sanctum, the situation grew increasingly dire. The energy field continued to expand, its effects becoming more pronounced. Daniel could feel the pull of conflicting temporal forces, threatening to tear him apart at a molecular level. Suddenly, a new energy signature filled the room. Dr. Alara, monitoring the situation from her position on the nearby moon, had recalibrated her energy transmitter. The two fields began to interact, creating a complex web of forces that threatened to tear apart the local fabric of reality. Daniel gritted his teeth, pushing through the disorientation. He bypassed the main control systems, making a desperate attempt to interface directly with the device's core. As he connected with the alien technology, his mind was once again flooded with an overwhelming stream of information and energy. The room filled with a blinding light as the device's energy output spiraled out of control. Daniel fell to his knees, his body racked with pain as he struggled to contain and redirect the massive surge of power. Princess Cora rushed to his side, using her own abilities to try and stabilize him. "Hold on, Daniel," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of energy. "We're almost there." The fate of the mission, the Alliance, and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance as Daniel fought against the overwhelming force of the device. The room continued to warp and twist around them, reality itself seeming to unravel at the seams. Seams of reality. Time seemed to slow and stretch as Daniel pushed his consciousness to its limits, desperately trying to contain the unleashed power. Just as it seemed the room would tear itself apart, the facility shook violently. The walls cracked and buckled, debris raining down around them. Princess Cora's energy shield flickered but held, protecting Daniel from the worst of the temporal distortions. Through the haze of pain and disorientation, Daniel heard the sound of a door being forced open. A team of human Ventaxian engineers burst into the room, led by a familiar face. "Dr. Alara," Princess Cora shouted, her voice strained as she maintained a protective field. The scientist took in the scene with a quick, practiced eye. "Set up the dampeners," she barked to her team. "Now!" The engineers sprang into action, positioning sleek devices around the perimeter of the room. As they activated, the wild fluctuations in the air began to subside slightly. Dr. Alara rushed to Daniel's side, a compact device in her hands. "Hold on, Coleman," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "This should help." She activated the device, and a focused beam of energy shot towards Daniel and the malfunctioning cosmic purist machine. The conflicting forces seemed to stabilize, giving Daniel the opening he needed. With a surge of willpower, Daniel redirected a portion of the energy surge back into the device's core. The machine sputtered and whined, internal systems overloading. Sparks flew from control panels as the energy output began to decrease rapidly. As the immediate threat subsided, the strain on Daniel's body and mind became too much. His vision blurred and he felt himself falling. Strong arms caught him before he hit the ground. "I've got you." Princess Cora's voice came from far away. "Stay with me, Daniel." The room spun around him as he fought to stay conscious. Through half-lidded eyes, he saw Commander Zax and a team of soldiers enter the chamber, weapons at the ready. "Area secure," Zax reported, his voice echoing strangely in Daniel's ears. "Beginning evacuation and capture of remaining hostiles." Daniel felt himself being lifted, carried away from the failing device. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Princess Cora's face, etched with concern. He drifted in and out of consciousness as they made their way out of the crumbling facility. Snippets of conversation reached him through the fog. Hidden vault. Massive intel cache. Admiral Brown reports space battle concluded. Need immediate medical attention. The next time Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying on a gurney in a brightly lit medical bay. The hum of advanced equipment filled the air, and he could hear the urgent voices of medical personnel around him. "Patients' neural patterns are highly unstable," a crisp, professional voice announced. "Initiating emergency protocol Gamma 7. Daniel felt a cool sensation spread through his body as the medical team worked to stabilize his condition. He tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but no words came out. A familiar face appeared above him. Dr. Vex, the chief medical officer he'd met on their first journey to Ventax Prime. "Rest easy, Commander Coleman," the doctor said, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with willpower. "We're combining the best of human and Ventaxian medical techniques to get you back on your feet." Daniel's world faded to black once more. Meanwhile, outside the medical bay, Princess Cora coordinated with Commander Zax and his team. They stood before a massive holographic display showing the captured cosmic purist technology and prisoners. "Ensure all artifacts are properly cataloged," Cora instructed, her royal bearing evident despite the fatigue etched on her face. "Any weapons or dangerous tech need to be secured for safe disposal." Zax nodded, his cybernetic eye whirring as he processed the information. "Already on it, Your Highness. We've also begun preliminary analysis of the intel cache. It's extensive." Cora's eyes widened slightly. "How extensive?" "Enough to keep our intelligence divisions busy for months, maybe years," Zax replied. "Sleeper cells, hidden bases, future operations, it's all here." The princess allowed herself a small smile. "Then perhaps this victory is even greater than we initially thought." Their conversation was interrupted by a beeping from Cora's communication device. She activated it, and a holographic image of her father, King Zyrax, appeared. "Cora." The king's deep voice resonated with pride and concern. "I received word of your success. How fares Commander Coleman?" Cora's expression tightened. "His condition is serious, Father. The human doctors are working with our medical team to stabilize him." King Zyrax nodded gravely. "I'm having our most advanced medical facilities prepared for his arrival. And, Cora, we must properly honor the humans for their role in this victory. Begin preparations for a formal ceremony." "Yes, Father," Cora replied, her mind already racing with plans. As the communication ended, Cora turned to gaze out a nearby viewport. The stars streaked by as the human Ventaxian fleet made its way back to Ventax Prime. The immediate threat of the cosmic purists had been neutralized, but she knew that challenges still lay ahead. The princess's thoughts turned to Daniel, fighting for his life in the medical bay. She made a silent vow to strengthen the bonds between their peoples, to ensure that the sacrifices made this day would lead to a brighter future for both humans and Ventaxians. As the fleet entered the swirling vortex of the wormhole, Princess Cora steeled herself for the tasks ahead. The galaxy was changing, and the Human-Ventaxian alliance would be at the forefront of that change. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the fleet emerged from the swirling vortex of the wormhole, the gleaming spires of Ventax Prime's capital city came into view. The sight would have been breathtaking if not for the urgency that gripped the ship's medical bay. Daniel Coleman lay motionless on a high-tech gurney, his vital signs fluctuating dangerously on the holographic displays above him. Dr. Vex's multifaceted eyes darted between the readings and his patient's pale face. "Prepare for immediate transfer," the doctor ordered, his voice calm but tinged with urgency. "We need to get him to the central medical facility now." As soon as the ship docked, a team of specialized medical personnel rushed Daniel's gurney through the sleek corridors of the spaceport. Princess Cora kept pace beside them, her face a mask of willpower. "How is he?" she asked Dr. Vex as they hurried towards a waiting medical transport. "Critical but stable for now," the doctor replied. "The damage to his neural pathways is severe. We'll need to use our most advanced techniques to have any hope of repairing them." The transport lifted off, streaking through the Ventaxian sky towards the gleaming dome of the central medical facility. Inside, a team of human and Ventaxian doctors were already preparing for Daniel's arrival. As Daniel was whisked away into the facility's most advanced treatment chamber, Princess Cora found herself ushered to a nearby waiting area. Commander Zax approached, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on her. "Your Highness," he said with a respectful nod, "we've begun processing the intelligence from the cosmic purist stronghold. The amount of data is substantial." Cora straightened, pushing her worry for Daniel to the back of her mind. There was work to be done. "We need to establish a dedicated task force immediately, coordinate with the human analysts, and set up a secure facility for data processing." Zax nodded, already tapping commands into his wrist computer. "I'll have a team assembled within the hour." As Cora immersed herself in the post-victory efforts, Daniel's unconscious form floated in a specialized healing tank. Dr. Vex and his team worked tirelessly, using a combination of regenerative therapies and carefully calibrated energy fields to repair the damage to his neural pathways. Days passed in a blur of activity. The newly established Joint Human-Ventaxian Task Force set up operations in a state-of-the-art facility, its rooms humming with the sound of advanced data processing systems. Experts from both species pored over the treasure trove of intelligence, uncovering the far-reaching tendrils of the cosmic purist organization. In the grand halls of the Ventaxian Royal Palace, King Zyrax hosted a series of high-level diplomatic meetings. Representatives from Earth and the Galactic Unity Front gathered around ornate tables. Their discussions focused on the Alliance's new status as a major galactic power. "The combined strength of our peoples has shifted the balance of power in this sector," King Zyrax declared, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We must now work together to ensure stability and progress for all." Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Earth government initiated sweeping reforms. New educational programs sprung up across the globe, offering courses in Ventaxian history and culture. Military bases buzzed with activity as human forces began adopting new training regimens and technologies developed during the recent conflict. In a secure laboratory on Ventax Prime, Dr. Alara hunched over a workstation, her eyes fixed on a holographic model of the captured cosmic purist device. After days of relentless analysis, her team had isolated a key component that promised to revolutionize energy manipulation. "This could change everything," she murmured, her fingers dancing across the interface as she refined her calculations. As weeks passed, Commander Zax led a series of precision strikes against hidden cosmic purist cells throughout the sector. His teams moved with surgical precision, dismantling the organization's infrastructure piece by piece. Through it all, Daniel Coleman remained in his coma-like state, his brain activity fluctuating as it processed the vast amount of information absorbed during his interface with the alien device. Princess Cora made daily visits to his medical suite, often spending hours by his side. One evening, as she sat reading reports aloud to Daniel's unresponsive form, Dr. Vex burst into the room, his eyes wide with excitement. "Princess," he said, breathless, "we've detected an unprecedented surge of activity in Commander Coleman's brain. His vital signs are stabilizing. I believe he may be on the verge of regaining consciousness." Cora leapt to her feet, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" "We wait," Dr. Vex replied, his voice filled with cautious optimism. "And we hope." As the medical team rushed to prepare for this critical moment, tension built throughout the facility. In the waiting area, Alliance leaders gathered, their conversations hushed and expectant. The potential awakening of Daniel Coleman carried with it the promise of new insights, new possibilities for the future of human-Ventaxian relations. Inside the medical suite, monitors beeped and glowed as Daniel's vitals continued to stabilize. Princess Cora stood at his bedside, her hand resting lightly on his. She watched his face intently, searching for any sign of movement. Suddenly, Daniel's eyelids flickered. A small gasp escaped Cora's lips as she leaned closer, hardly daring to breathe. The room fell silent, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then, slowly, Daniel Coleman opened his eyes and met Cora's gaze. A mixture of relief and confusion washed over his face as he tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper escaped his lips. "Daniel," Cora breathed, her voice filled with emotion. "You're awake." Dr. Vex quickly moved to Daniel's side, his multifaceted eyes scanning the various monitors surrounding the bed. "Commander Coleman, please remain calm. You've been in a coma-like state for several weeks. We're going to run some tests to assess your condition." Daniel nodded weakly, his eyes darting around the room as he tried to process his surroundings. The medical team sprang into action, carefully checking his vital signs and neural responses. Dr. Vex produced a small, sleek device and held it near Daniel's temple. "This will help us communicate more effectively," the doctor explained. "It translates neural impulses into speech. Try to form words in your mind, and the device will vocalize them for you." Daniel concentrated, and after a moment, a synthetic voice emanated from the device. "What happened?" Cora squeezed his hand gently. "You saved us all, Daniel. The cosmic purist device was neutralized, but the strain on your neural pathways was severe. We've been working to heal you ever since." As the medical team continued their assessments, Daniel's strength gradually returned. Over the next few days, he began to share fragments of information about the cosmic purist technology and operations that he had absorbed during his interface with the alien device. Commander Zax visited Daniel's room, his cybernetic eye whirring as he recorded the invaluable intelligence. "This is exactly what we needed," Zax said, his voice filled with drive. "With this information, we can strike at the heart of their remaining cells." True to his word, Zax and his team launched a series of precision strikes against hidden cosmic purist bases scattered throughout the galaxy. Reports of successful operations flooded in, each one dealing a significant blow to the organization's remnants. As Daniel's recovery progressed, King Zyrax announced plans for a grand ceremony to honor the heroes of the recent conflict. The event will be held in the capital city of Ventax Prime, drawing dignitaries from across the galaxy. On the day of the ceremony, Princess Cora carefully helped Daniel into a hoverchair. Though still weak, he was determined to attend. As they made their way to the grand hall, Daniel marveled at the gleaming spires and elegant architecture of the Ventaxian capital. The ceremony was a spectacle of light and sound, with holographic displays showcasing the pivotal moments of the conflict. Alien dignitaries from a multitude of species filled the hall, their diverse forms a testament to the far-reaching impact of the Human-Ventaxian alliance. King Zyrax stood at the center of a raised platform, his regal bearing commanding the attention of all present. As Daniel was wheeled onto the stage by Princess Cora, a hush fell over the crowd. "Commander Daniel Coleman," King Zyrax's voice boomed through the hall. "Your bravery and sacrifice have saved countless lives and secured a future of peace for our peoples. It is my honor to present you with the Star of Valor, the highest honor of Ventax Prime." The king placed a shimmering, star-shaped medal around Daniel's neck. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound reverberating through the cavernous space. In the days following the ceremony, the Human-Ventaxian alliance experienced a surge of support and recognition across the galaxy. New trade agreements were forged and cultural exchange programs flourished. The alliance's success became a beacon of hope for interstellar cooperation. Meanwhile, in a state-of-the-art laboratory, Dr. Alara and her team worked tirelessly to adapt the captured cosmic purist technology for peaceful purposes. Daniel's insights proved invaluable, allowing them to make significant breakthroughs in understanding the alien device's inner workings. "We've done it, Dr. Alara exclaimed one day, her eyes shining with excitement. She gestured to a sleek, cylindrical object on a nearby workbench. This prototype should allow for instantaneous communication across vast distances of space. It could revolutionize interstellar travel and exploration. As the prototype underwent initial testing, Daniel focused on his physical recovery. The rehabilitation center on Ventax Prime featured Earth-like environments, allowing him to regain his strength in familiar settings. Princess Cora often joined him during these sessions, her presence a constant source of support and motivation. During one such session, as Daniel took careful steps on a simulated forest path, he felt a sudden surge of energy course through his body. His vision blurred momentarily, and he saw flashes of complex schematics and alien symbols. Dr. Vex, who had been monitoring the session, rushed to Daniel's side. "What happened? Are you all right?" Daniel blinked, his palms sweating from the experience. I'm not sure. For a moment, it was like I could see inside the machines around us, like I was connected to them somehow." The doctor's multifaceted eyes widened. "Fascinating. It seems the alterations to your neural pathways may have granted you some unique abilities. We'll need to run more tests to understand the full extent of these changes." As news of Daniel's developing abilities spread, it sparked intense discussions among Alliance leadership about the potential long-term effects of exposure to alien technology. Some saw it as an opportunity for unprecedented advancement, while others urged caution. Commander Zax, ever pragmatic, focused on the immediate security implications. He proposed the formation of a permanent joint Human-Ventaxian rapid response force, designed to handle emerging threats throughout the galaxy. "We need to be prepared for whatever comes next," Zax argued during a high-level meeting. "A force trained in both our combat techniques and equipped with our latest technology could respond swiftly to any crisis." The proposal gained traction, and a pilot program was soon initiated. Human and Ventaxian soldiers began joint training exercises, their diverse skills complementing each other in ways that surprised even veteran commanders. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel's recovery continued to progress. The day finally came when he was ready to take his first unaided steps since awakening from his coma. As he stood at one end of the rehabilitation center, Princess Cora waited at the other, her arms outstretched encouragingly. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his body on his legs. He took one step, then another, his movements slow but steady. As he crossed the room, a sense of triumph welled up inside him. Reaching Cora, He embraced her tightly, both of them laughing with joy and relief. The medical team applauded, their faces beaming with pride at their patient's progress. As Daniel stood there, supported by Cora and surrounded by his allies, he knew that this was just the beginning. The Human-Ventaxian Alliance faced an uncertain future, filled with both challenges and opportunities. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, united in their quest for peace and progress in the vast expanse of the galaxy. As Daniel stood there, supported by Cora and surrounded by his allies, a sense of purpose filled him. He knew that his journey of recovery was just beginning, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's progress accelerated rapidly. His therapy sessions became more intense, and he found himself pushing his limits daily. One morning, as he finished a particularly grueling workout, Commander Zax entered the rehabilitation center, his cybernetic eye whirring as he scanned the room. "Commander Coleman," Zax said, his voice crisp and businesslike, "I have news from the Alliance leadership. They've approved an ambitious new project, and they want you involved." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. Curiosity piqued. "What kind of project?" Zax's organic eye gleamed with excitement. "We're building a massive space station. Unity Hub, they're calling it. It'll be our new base of operations, right between Earth and Ventax Prime." The news spread quickly, and soon the entire Alliance was abuzz with activity. Construction began in earnest, with human and Ventaxian engineers working side by side to bring the ambitious design to life. Daniel watched the progress from the viewport of a transport ship, marveling at the scale of the structure taking shape against the backdrop of distant stars. As Unity Hub grew, so did Daniel's abilities. Dr. Lara and her team had developed a neural interface device that allowed him to connect with Alliance systems in ways never before possible. In a secure lab aboard a Ventaxian research vessel, Daniel sat in a specially designed chair, electrodes attached to his temples. "All right, Daniel," Dr. Lara said, her voice calm and reassuring. "We're going to start with something simple. Try to access the ship's navigation system." Daniel closed his eyes, concentrating. Suddenly, he felt a rush of information flooding his mind. He could see the ship's trajectory, feel the subtle vibrations of its engines, and even sense the vast emptiness of space around them. "I can see it all," he whispered, eyes still closed. "It's incredible." Dr. Lara's fingers flew across her console, recording every detail. "This is remarkable. Your neural pathways are integrating with the ship's systems at an unprecedented rate." As Daniel's abilities grew, so did the possibilities they presented. Princess Cora, ever the visionary, saw an opportunity to push the boundaries of exploration. She presented her idea to the Alliance leadership during a high-level meeting aboard Unity Hub. "We have a unique chance to venture into uncharted space," Cora said, her voice filled with passion. "With Daniel's abilities and our combined technologies, we could discover wonders beyond our imagination." The proposal was met with enthusiasm, and soon plans were underway for a long-term expedition. The HSV Nexus, a prototype ship designed to harness Daniel's unique capabilities, became the centerpiece of the mission. As preparations for the expedition continued, Commander Zax focused on strengthening the Alliance's defensive capabilities. His Rapid Response Force, composed of elite human and Ventaxian operatives, completed its training and quickly proved its worth. Their first real test came when intelligence reports indicated a resurgent cosmic purist cell was planning to attack a major trade hub. Zax's team deployed swiftly, their ship cutting through space at maximum speed. "Remember your training," Zax said as they approached the target. "We hit hard, we hit fast, and we show these purist scum what happens when they threaten our peace." The operation was a resounding success. The cosmic purist cell was neutralized with surgical precision, their plans thwarted before they could cause any real damage. As news of the victory spread, It bolstered confidence in the Alliance throughout the sector. Back on Earth, humanity celebrated its own milestone. The completion of the first space elevator marked a new era in space exploration. Daniel watched the inaugural launch from Unity Hub, marveling at the sleek capsule ascending the impossibly tall structure. "It's beautiful," he said, turning to Princess Cora, who stood beside him. She nodded, her eyes reflecting the distant glow of Earth. "It's more than that, Daniel. It's a symbol of how far we've come together." As Unity Hub neared completion, a new challenge arose. Reports came in of an unknown alien civilization emerging from a nearby sector. The Zoraks, as they called themselves, viewed the rapid expansion of the human-Ventaxian alliance with suspicion. Tension mounted as Zorak ships appeared at the edges of Alliance space. The Alliance leadership debated their response, with some calling for a show of military strength, while others urged caution and diplomacy. In the midst of these discussions, Daniel stepped forward. "I'll go," he said, his voice steady and determined. "I'll lead a diplomatic mission to their homeworld. Maybe I can help them understand we're not a threat." Princess Cora immediately volunteered to accompany him. "My diplomatic experience could be crucial," she argued. "And someone needs to keep you out of trouble." Despite concerns for their safety, the Alliance leadership agreed. The HSV Nexus was quickly prepared for its maiden voyage, its systems humming with potential as Daniel interfaced with them. As they prepared to depart from Unity Hub, Daniel stood on the bridge of the Nexus, gazing out at the stars. Princess Cora joined him, her presence a comforting constant in the face of the unknown. "Ready?" she asked, a mix of excitement and apprehension in her voice. Daniel nodded, feeling the ship system's pulse in harmony with his own thoughts. "Ready as I'll ever be." With a thought, he engaged the Nexus's advanced propulsion system. The ship surged forward, leaving Unity Hub behind as it embarked on its vital mission. As they accelerated towards Zorak space, neither Daniel nor Cora could have anticipated the discovery that awaited them, a discovery that would challenge everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. A discovery that would challenge everything they thought they knew about their place in the cosmos. As the HSV Nexus glided through the vastness of space, Daniel's mind raced with anticipation. He could feel the ship's systems humming in harmony with his thoughts, a constant reminder of his unique connection to the vessel. Princess Cora stood beside him, her presence a steadying influence as they ventured into the unknown. Their journey took an unexpected turn when long-range sensors detected an anomaly on a nearby planet. Curiosity piqued. Daniel and Cora decided to investigate, hoping the detour might provide valuable insights for their upcoming diplomatic mission. The planet's surface was a tapestry of crumbling structures and overgrown vegetation, remnants of an ancient civilization long since vanished. As they explored the ruins, Daniel's enhanced senses tingled with an inexplicable familiarity. "Cora, look at this," he called out, brushing away centuries of dust from a weathered stone tablet. The symbols etched into its surface bore a striking resemblance to both human and Ventaxian early writing systems. Princess Cora's eyes widened as she examined the artifact. "This is unprecedented. These markings suggest a common origin for our species." Their discovery sparked a frenzy of activity. The team worked tirelessly, cataloging artifacts and scanning the ruins. As they pieced together the puzzle of this lost civilization, a startling picture emerged, one that hinted at a shared ancestry between humans, Ventaxians, and perhaps even the Zoraks. With their earth-shattering findings carefully documented, Daniel and Cora reluctantly left the mysterious planet behind. As the HSV Nexus resumed its course toward Zorak space, they pored over the data, compiling a comprehensive report that would become the cornerstone of their diplomatic strategy. The ship's sensors blared to life as they crossed into Zorak's territory. Within moments, a flotilla of imposing warships surrounded them, their sleek, otherworldly designs a stark contrast to the familiar lines of the Nexus. Daniel's heart raced, but he remained outwardly calm. He closed his eyes, interfacing directly with the ship's communication systems. In a feat that surprised even himself, he established a direct link with the Zorax fleet commander. "This is Daniel Coleman of the Human-Ventaxian Alliance," he transmitted, his thoughts translating seamlessly into the alien language. "We come in peace and request a formal diplomatic meeting." The unexpected move caught the Zorax off guard. After a tense moment of silence, a reply came through. "Proceed to the coordinates we are transmitting. Any deviation will be met with force." The designated meeting place was an uninhabited moon in a nearby star system. As the Nexus touched down on its barren surface, Daniel and Princess Cora led their delegation out onto the alien landscape. They were greeted by a contingent of Zorax officials, their tall, scaled forms towering over the Human-Ventaxian representatives. Inside a hastily constructed meeting facility, Daniel activated a holographic display showcasing their recent discoveries. The Zorax representatives watched with increasing interest as images of ancient artifacts and complex data analysis filled the air. "As you can see," Princess Cora explained, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone, "these findings suggest a shared historical connection between our civilizations." The revelation visibly impacted the Zorax. Their multiple eyes blinked rapidly, and a low murmur filled the room as they conferred among themselves. Seizing the moment, Daniel interfaced with some of the Zorax technology present in the room. Holographic displays flickered to life around him, responding to his mental commands. The demonstration of advanced Human-Ventaxian capabilities, combined with the shared historical discoveries, began to shift the Zorax perspective. As discussions progressed, Daniel's enhanced senses picked up an anomaly. A fleet was approaching, one that didn't match the signature of their diplomatic escort. He leaned in close to Princess Cora, whispering urgently, "We may have trouble incoming. Prepare for evacuation." No sooner had the words left his mouth than alarms blared throughout the facility. The radical Zorax faction had launched their surprise attack, targeting both the diplomatic compound and the HSV Nexus in orbit. Daniel sprang into action, interfacing with the facility's defense systems. Emergency shields hummed to life, deflecting the initial barrage of weapons fire. Princess Cora took charge of the evacuation, her voice calm and authoritative as she directed both Human-Ventaxian and friendly Zorax representatives towards the hidden emergency shuttles. Chaos erupted around them as they made their way through the compound. Daniel's mind raced, simultaneously coordinating their escape and disrupting the attacker systems. Weapons misfired and communication channels filled with static, buying precious time for the evacuees. Outside, the night sky lit up with the flashes of orbital combat. The HSV Nexus, vastly outnumbered, fought valiantly against the hostile Zorax ships. Just as the situation seemed dire, new energy signatures appeared on the sensors. Commander Zax's rapid response force had arrived, turning the tide of the battle. Daniel and Princess Cora herded the last of the delegates onto the final shuttle. As the engines roared to life, Daniel focused his abilities one last time. A powerful signal emanated from his mind, cascading through the Zorax systems on the ground. Weapons fell silent, and the remaining hostile forces found themselves temporarily paralyzed. The shuttle rocketed into the sky, joining the HSV Nexus and Commander Zax's fleet in orbit. United Human-Ventaxian forces, now bolstered by loyal Zorax ships, drove back the radical faction. As the last enemy vessels retreated, an uneasy calm settled over the battlefield. Aboard the Nexus, Daniel and Princess Cora began drafting their report on the mission's outcomes. The events on the Zorax moon had not only averted a potential interstellar war, but had also laid the groundwork for a new era of cooperation. As they approached Unity Hub, where Alliance leadership eagerly awaited news of their expedition, Daniel gazed out at the stars. The successful negotiation with the Zoraks and the discoveries of their shared heritage promised to reshape the political landscape of the sector. Yet, the emergence of hostile factions served as a stark reminder that their journey was nowhere near the end. The HSV Nexus glided into its docking bay, its hull bearing the scars of recent battle. As Daniel prepared to disembark and face the next chapter of their interstellar adventure, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the universe held, and what challenges lay ahead for the ever-expanding Alliance. As Daniel and Princess Cora prepared to deliver their report, an urgent transmission from Earth shattered the moment of anticipation. The ship's communication system crackled to life, projecting a holographic image of Dr. Alara. Her face was etched with concern as she spoke. "Daniel, Cora, we have a critical situation. A massive cosmic purist fleet has emerged from deep space and launched a surprise attack on the solar system." Daniel's heart raced as he processed the information. "How bad is it, Doctor?" "It's their final push," Dr. Alara replied, her voice grave. "They're throwing everything they have at us. If we don't stop them now, all our progress will be undone." Princess Cora's eyes met Daniel's, a silent understanding passing between them. This was the moment their journey had been building towards. Without hesitation, Daniel interfaced with the HSV Nexus. He felt the ship systems respond to his thoughts, pushing beyond their normal limits. "We're on our way," he transmitted back to Earth. "Alert Commander Zax and our Zorax allies. We'll need everyone for this." As the Nexus changed course, accelerating towards Earth at breakneck speed, Daniel's mind raced. He sifted through the knowledge they had gained from the ancient ruins, searching for any advantage they could use against the purists. "Cora," he called out, his eyes still closed as he communicated with the ship, "we need to combine technologies. Can you work with our Zorax allies to integrate their weapon systems with ours?" Princess Cora nodded, her fingers already dancing across a holographic interface. "I'm on it. Their energy modulation techniques could significantly boost our firepower." As they approached Earth's solar system, the true scale of the cosmic purist assault became clear. Hundreds of enemy ships swarmed around the planet, their weapons flashing as they engaged Earth's orbital defenses. Daniel opened a channel to the entire Alliance fleet. "This is Daniel Coleman aboard the HSV Nexus. We're facing the fight of our lives. But remember, we have something they don't: unity. Human, Ventaxi, and Zorax. Today we stand as one. Let's show these purists what that means." The HSV Nexus led the charge, its newly integrated weapon systems glowing with power. Princess Cora manned the controls, her expertise guiding each precision strike. Beams of energy lanced out from the ship, cutting through the purist front lines with devastating effect. Around them, the Alliance fleet engaged the enemy. Commander Zax's ships executed complex maneuvers, drawing purist fire away from Earth's defenses. Zorax vessels unleashed barges of exotic weaponry, their advanced technology catching the purists off guard. Daniel's enhanced senses allowed him to coordinate the entire fleet's movements with unprecedented accuracy. Through the neural interface, he directed friendly ships to weak points in the enemy formation, always staying one step ahead of the purist tactics. As the space battle raged, Daniel received a transmission from Dr. Alara on Earth's surface. "Daniel, we've activated the planetary defense grid using Nexus Key technology. It's buying us time, but we can't hold out forever." Daniel acknowledged the message, his mind already formulating a new strategy. He spotted the Cosmic Purist flagship, a massive vessel at the heart of the enemy fleet. "Commander Zax," he called out, "we need to take out their command and control. Are you up for a boarding action?" "Always," came the gruff reply. "My team is ready. Just get us there." Using the HSV Nexus's advanced targeting systems, Daniel created a path through the chaotic battlefield. Commander Zax's assault shuttle slipped through the gaps, protected by a screen of Alliance fighters. As Zax and his team fought their way through the Purist flagship, Daniel focused on disrupting the enemy's communication networks. His consciousness flowed through the digital realm, planting false orders and scrambling tactical data. Princess Cora's voice cut through his concentration. "Daniel, I've found a weakness in their flagship's defenses. If we hit it just right, we could take out their entire command structure." Daniel's eyes snapped open, meeting Cora's determined gaze. "Then let's end this," he said, his hands moving to the weapons controls. The HSV Nexus banked hard, lining up its main cannon with the vulnerable point Cora had identified. Energy built up within the ship. The combined power of human, Ventaxian, and Zorax technology focused into a single, devastating beam. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. With a thought, he fired. The beam lanced out, piercing through the Cosmic Purist flagship's weakened shields. It struck the reactor core with pinpoint accuracy, unleashing a chain reaction that tore through the massive ship. As the flagship began to break apart, the Purist fleet fell into disarray. Without central command, their coordinated assault crumbled into individual skirmishes. Daniel allowed himself a moment of hope, but he knew the battle was a long way to go. The remaining Purist ships fought on with fanatical drive, and Commander Zax's team was still aboard the disintegrating flagship. As alarms blared throughout the HSV Nexus, warning of new threats and shifting battle lines, Daniel steeled himself for the next phase of the fight. The fate of Earth and the entire Alliance hung in the balance. There was no room for error, no time for rest. The final confrontation with the Cosmic Purists had only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.